I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. This is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting, duly convened this evening, May 28th, 2013. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Councilman Jay Arrowwood, if you would, to pronounce our invocation, please.
May we pray? Heavenly Father, as we begin tonight, I ask that you be with Councilman Griffin's father-in-law and their entire family. Pray that your will be done and may they feel your presence. I thank you for this day that you have created. I thank you for continuing to bless this city and this council. You have given this council the opportunity to serve this city, all who live here, all who work here, and all who visit here. I thank you for this opportunity. I humbly ask you to give this council the wisdom and the guidance we need as we go about serving your city. Help us to be good stewards of all you have entrusted us with. I ask you for your continued blessings on Greer. Be with us now as we conduct the business of the city. May all we do and say here tonight be pleasing to you. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening, and appreciate your attendance here as we move on into the course of our meeting. The first item of which is our public forum, time that we set aside time for those folks that may want to address something pertinent to the business meeting of this evening, to have a time to address council. Ms. Duncan, anyone to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
With that, then, we'll move to the minutes of the council meeting. Council, you have contained in your packet this evening the minutes from May 14th, 2013 meeting. I'll entertain a motion that they be received.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowwood?
Yes.
Ms. Bookert?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, you have contained as well in your packet the departmental reports. We continue to refine those to make sure that they are concise and relevant to your needs in regards to monthly reports, and we appreciate the work of various different departments and department heads as they pull those white papers, for lack of a better word, together containing the information in regards to their activities during the month. I think you'll find those informational, and certainly department heads or Mr. Driggers would be glad to answer any questions you've got in that regard. And David Seifert has joined us this evening to give us our financial update. Mr. Seifert.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'll be presenting the financial reports for the period ended April 30th, 2013. At that time, we have year-to-date revenue of $15,664,767. Year-to-date expenditures of $13,890,940, and that amount is 6% under budget. If you'll reference the dashboards, we have a positive variance on the revenue side against the benchmark of $1,351,065, and a positive variance on the expenditure benchmark of $1,146,799. That's an overall positive variance of $2,497,864. And for the period, we have a general fund cash balance of $5,511,635. Also like to quickly present the two other funds that are items of interest. For the hospitality fund, we have year-to-date revenues of $1,248,186, and that amount is 4% over budget for the period April 30th. And then also in our stormwater fund, year-to-date revenue of $641,992, and that's roughly $3,000 under budget. So for all intents and purposes, it is right on budget. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Council, this evening we have a petitioner to come before us, and by way of some information in that regard, Alan Smith, our chamber president, has joined us as well too. If Mr. Smith and Mr. Boyansky want to start making their way down towards the front, John Boyansky is the chairman of Pulse, and that is an organization that works under the auspices of both the Greenville and Greer Chamber, and is an initiative that Mr. Smith and others have worked to put together so that young professionals in our area can join those folks from the Greenville area. And they are here to bring us some information in regards to the organization that represents, which is called Pulse. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, honorable members of Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight on behalf of the Greater Greer Chamber of Commerce. As you know, in order for any community to be vibrant, in order for any community to be sustainable, you have to attract, retain, recruit young professionals. And that's exactly why the Greater Greer Chamber of Commerce reached out to Pulse, the state of South Carolina's largest young professional network, in an effort to merge our two young professionals groups. We believe at the Chamber, as I'm sure you all believe, that the product we have in Greer is one we want everyone to see, because if they see it once, they're going to come back and they're going to see it again, and hopefully when they do, they'll spend some money while they're here. So that is why one of the many reasons why we merged with Pulse, to showcase our community to young professionals, not only in Greer and Greenville, but really all over the upstate. And so I just wanted to set up John's presentation, and we're happy to have his leadership in the upstate, and really happy to call him a partner at the Greater Greer Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Al. Honorable Mayor, City Council members, it's a pleasure to talk to everyone here tonight. I thank you for your time. Mayor Danner's known me for a lot longer than he wants to probably admit, from my days as a reporter for the Greenville papers and the Spartanburg paper, and I see some of my former colleagues in the walls tonight. I will try to make this brief. I'm a Yankee by trade, so I speak fast, so I'm going to try to speak slow because I am a very fast speaker. It's also tough because I'm a Syracuse grad, and I see Judge Mims is here tonight. His Duke lacrosse team beat us for the national title yesterday, so I'm not holding that against anyone from the city of Greer tonight. But real quickly, thank you, Alan. We are the Young Professionals Group for the Greer Chamber and the Greenville Chamber, and real quickly, I'm going to run through what we do. About Pulse, as a voice for Greenville's young talent, Pulse connects, engages, and inspires for leadership, development, and social enrichment. We are a group for ages 22 to 39 young professionals, not just in Greenville and Greer, but through anyone in the upstates. Our 2013 Advisory Council is myself as a chairperson, Barry Hicks vice chair. I'd recognize Mike Pennington is in the room tonight, who is our special projects chair. Christina Gridley-Roy, please, who is actually a Greer resident, who is not here tonight. I think she's out of town working, but she lives right up by Lake Robinson. Mark Martin, our investment chair, who is here, and is a Greer resident as well. Kyle Putnam, our leadership chair, who actually works in Greer. Marketing chair Megan Wright, she has no Greer connections whatsoever, so we're not going to talk about her. Pace setters Layla Aziz, sports chair Blaine Hart, social chair Kathleen Byrne, talent chair Joe Poor. Our leadership structure. While we are a group of the Greenville Chamber and the Greer Chamber, we answer to staff and work with staff, and I'd like to recognize Alan from the Greer Chamber is obviously here, but Tammy Miller, our lead coordinator from the Greenville Chamber, is here tonight. We kind of work with her mostly, and ultimately we answer to the Greenville Chamber Board of Directors, and through them the Leadership Development Advisory Council. Pulse is broken down into essentially 8 different programs. We'll get to that. Our programs. We have Pulse Sports. Pulse Sports is our way for our members to get active. We always hear about young professionals don't have a lot of time and energy to do things. Well, this is a way for them to network, build those bonds, build those great amenities through things such as a kickball team, softball teams, basketball teams. It sounds kind of strange, but in terms of networking, it's been one of our best ways to build leadership. Because people, I guess, they go out and they play kickball for 2 hours on a Wednesday night, they build a really great bond, sweating and smelling together out in the woods, so they're happy with that. Leadership. We are a leadership program. Our leadership program consists of several things. It's a bi-monthly breakfast, or bi-monthly leadership luncheons, a Rise and Shine personal development breakfast series, and leadership signature events. Our socials, we do like to have fun once in a while, like our members to be able to get out, so we have bi-monthly events, usually at an event somewhere in the upstate in September. I'm crossing my head, we'll be doing an event in Greer for our members to come and experience downtown Greer. We also do the hangar party, which this year we set a record for attendance. We had almost 600 people attend the event. And then in December, we have our annual report to our members in the upstate where we recap everything we've done this year. Pulse Connects, this is near and dear to my heart. This is our volunteering arm. I was the inaugural Connects chair 2 years ago. This is where we give back to the community. Part of that is also Pulse in the Arts. We'll be doing a Pulse in the Arts event in Greer in October. We're going to have all our members find codes on trade and also learn about public art in downtown Greer. We also help our members take part in local government and nonprofit boards and commissions. It's our kind of way of getting our members out there and working for the community. Paysetters. Pulse Paysetters is our mentoring program. This is where we have our members from the community, established leaders. They work with our members, kind of get them to that next level. We've seen a lot of creation. We've seen a lot of ability from that. We've seen our members making those wonderful bonds that will help them become that next level of leader. Pulse Talent, which is starting May 30th, this week on Thursday night. This is a unique program. We've been hearing for a while the upstate's been suffering from a brain drain. We have all these colleges. When we graduate these kids, they don't stay here. They're moving out. They're going away. Talent is our way of keeping them here. It's about a 14-week program. We have about 10 events where it's to show them everything the upstate has to offer. We have a walking tour of downtown Greenville. We have a baseball game. We're going to do a social. We have a CEO connection luncheon. I think we have a volunteering day in Greer. We want them to get experience and learn about the upstate. We want to come back after college and invest, look for jobs, start businesses, be entrepreneurs. We could do this on our own. Our title sponsor is AT Locke, Total Accounting, and is actually on the Chamber and Greer's board. Right, Alan? I think Alan's not sure, but very active in the Greer community. And our community partner is Godshall Staffing. As you saw, all those events, most of them had a logo to it. Those are our sponsors. Our money comes from sponsorships and dues from our members. Our membership is only $50 a year for Greer Chamber members. People always ask, well, who can attend the Pulse events? Well, it's young professionals aged 22 to 39. You have to be a Pulse member, but tonight I will offer out to every member of the City Council, if you guys want to come to one of our events, we would love to have you there. We love when leadership in the county comes and meets with our members, because really that's how we grow. We can have everyone at an event and they can have a fun time, but unless they're meeting people, unless they're meeting with people who have accomplished things, who have taken that leadership role, we would love to have you guys come to our events. Eligible for corporate memberships, any company with over 10 employees. If you want to sign up your members, you get discounts. Pulse dues are $50 for chamber members, $100 for non-chamber members. Membership expires December 31st every year, so it's a year-to-year thing. It's every January 1st you got to re-sign, and it goes right to December 31st. Pulse is funded, like I said, through our membership and sponsorship income. Members find out by following us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and a newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks, which Tammy Miller and I have been working on today. Ways to contact us and find out more about us. Now, I kept it very short, so any questions? Do you guys have anything you'd like to know more about Pulse? Council? We appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so very much. You have a great evening.
Thank you, John. Council, even though we've all been invited to the event, some of us would probably be chaperones rather than...
I would beg to differ, Mayor.
Indeed, I have slipped into a couple of them. Yeah, it is a great organization, and I wanted John to have time to come and to talk this evening, even as rapidly as he did about the Pulse organization, because it is one of those organizations that oftentimes sort of slips under the radar, and particularly here in Greer. Those folks are in and around Greer, not only to take advantage of the restaurants and the other opportunities, but to volunteer as well too. And so we thank you, John, and other Pulse members for what you're doing to help make Greer a better place. And certainly think there is a wealth of opportunity in terms of new members here in our community, and nice to know that even among your leadership that there are a number of folks that have that Greer connection tied to the leadership. And Alan, to you and your folks, hats off for recognizing that opportunity and forward thinking enough to be able to fold our group in with the Greenville group. And it has indeed made a dynamic organization, and we will be seeing those folks here in Greer for a couple of special occasions, and then just from time to time for different meeting opportunities and volunteer opportunities. So again, to the Greer Chamber and to the Greenville Chamber and to the folks with Pulse, thank you for all you're doing, and we'll look forward to an update sometime in the near future. And we'll also look forward to seeing you around town as well, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now, I know the bulk of the audience tonight probably came to hear about the Pulse presentation or to see the judge get reappointed, one or the other. But I suspect there are some people here as well for what we're getting ready to do right now. And one of the things that we take the opportunity to do that I really enjoy is to recognize our employees and to recognize for years of service. And we do that on a regular basis. We also have, from time to time, the occasion to recognize somebody who is retiring. And that is even a more special occasion for us because it is an opportunity for us to thank them for their service to the city. And we have a lot of talented, dedicated, long-serving employees. And it is indeed our pleasure to be able to recognize that service to the city. And tonight, we want to do that. But we want to do it for a very special purpose because one of the reasons that this recognition is a little different is because it's a volunteer employee of the city. And in my mind, that makes it even a little bit more special because public service is indeed a calling. And whether or not you're doing it behind this desk up here, or you're doing it behind a fire truck, or you are doing it in a police car, or with our recreation department, or any of our other departments, if you are giving of your time, that means that is time that you have spent away from other pursuits around your home or your family. And we are indeed grateful for that. And so we want to recognize somebody special tonight in terms of an upcoming retirement. This particular person has volunteered of his time both behind this desk and in our community. And so I'm going to ask Jay Arrowwood, if he would, to come up here with me for just a second, and we've got a little presentation that we want to make to him. This proclamation says that the Greer City Council recognizes and honors Mr. Jay Arrowwood for 30 years of volunteer service to the City of Greer Fire Department. It says, whereas Jay Arrowwood has always placed the highest priority on the safety and well-being of the citizens of Greer. He began volunteer service to the City of Greer Fire Department on April the 13th, 1983, and concludes his remarkable tenure on April 13th, 2013. Whereas he displayed an unwavering commitment to his pledge of serving the City of Greer Fire Department, offering volunteer service on weekends while he attended Clemson University, and as a professional, frequently leaving job sites to respond to emergency calls. And whereas he served as a lieutenant for more than 15 years, a period during which he offered his professional experience while acting as construction facilitator for the city's training center in 2000. And whereas his service to the city spanned 3 fire chiefs, Chief Mac Bailey, Chief Hayward Brissy, and Chief Chris Harvey. And whereas he has long served as an advocate for his fellow volunteer firefighters, working to ensure that they are offered the same training certification opportunities as paid firefighters. And whereas he will continue to maintain a close relationship with members of the department, offering his support to keep the City of Greer Fire Department among the leading departments in South Carolina. Now, therefore, the Greer City Council and the City of Greer congratulate and thank Jay Arrowwood with this proclamation for 30 years of service to the City of Greer and its citizens as a volunteer firefighter. If you would join me in thanking Jay Arrowwood for 30 years of volunteer service to the City of Greer Fire Department. As I mentioned, volunteer service is a special calling, and that means that there was times that he was away from his family that he didn't necessarily have to be. And so I'm going to ask his family if they would come up and join him here, and if he'd like to offer a few remarks, we're going to allow him to do that. Don't run off. We've got one more thing before you get gone. I wanted these two big strapping boys to carry it off for you, so that's what we wanted to do.
30 years, that's a long time. When you look out at 30 years, you think, I'll never make 30 years. There's no need to even think about it. But when you look back at 30 years, you think, gosh, that went by very, very fast. It seems like, 2 weeks ago, I was 18, and I was living at home, and I just became a volunteer firefighter. I want to thank my mom and dad for all that they put up with when you have an 18-year-old son who's a volunteer fireman. All the loud radio traffic that wakes you up, me tearing out of the house in the middle of the night, 3 or 4 hours later coming back in. And all this normally happens between about 12:30 a.m. and 5 a.m. when everybody should be in bed. So Mom and Dad, thanks. To my wife Lisa and my sons AJ and Jake, thanks. Thanks for all the time that you have allowed me to serve. Time that I could have been with you guys. You said, it's okay. It's okay to go to those fires, go to those calls, be involved in the training, and be involved in everything that the department wants you to be involved with. So thanks a lot. In 30 years, a lot has changed. From our call volume, from the faces, the number of faces, the technology, the equipment that we use that helps us do our job better. But there's one thing that has not changed, and I don't think that it will ever change. It's the Greer Fire Department's ability to handle any emergency situation which may arise, whether it's a major fire, a rescue call, a medical call, a hazardous material incident. Know that the Greer Fire Department is there and that we are very, very capable of handling anything that's thrown our way. Now that says a lot about the leadership from days gone by, and it says a lot about the leadership today. I'd like to thank Chris Harvey for being my leader over these 30 years. When I came into the department, he was Engineer Harvey. He was serving under Lawton Bruce as his captain. Chief was promoted to captain, then assistant chief / fire marshal, and now he's our fire chief. Chris was is a inspiration as to how to lead, because there were many times that Chris, and rightly so, could have said things that were going on in an environment that just wasn't friendly for Chris. But he chose to stand tall. He chose to continue to lead and do the job he was asked to do. So Chris, thank you. I'm very fortunate to have served with such an outstanding department, which serves such an outstanding city. So, Fire Unit 87 is now 10-7.
On behalf of the City of Greer, we want to present Thank y'all. You want to say anything?
Now, y'all have to stay for the rest of it.
There was about 2 pages of handwritten notes that got held behind his back during that eloquent thank you for his service, and I think that speaks volumes about how heartfelt that was. He wasn't sure that he was going to be able to get through it, and neither was I. So it went well, and we thank Jay for his service. I think you got a sense of the fraternity that is represented by our fire department. It is a tight-knit group of men and women. With that, we'll turn it over to the administrator for the administrator's report. Mr. Driggs.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Mostly a couple of calendar items as reminders. One, we certainly want to make sure that your calendar is marked and you plan to join us this coming Saturday. We'll be gathering here at 11 o'clock for our annual employee family picnic. We have over 300 employees and family members that will be joining us here at City Hall and here at City Park. It's an annual event for us. It's a wonderful occasion. It's a great opportunity for the children and for employees, and we certainly hope that you'll be joining us as well. Again, that'll be taking place this Saturday at 11 o'clock here as we celebrate and honor our employees and their family members. We are in the process of preparing for Freedom Blast. It's going to be here before you know it. June 29th is the date on Saturday evening. But we had an opportunity earlier today to host a press conference for that event. It was a wonderful opportunity as the mayor and I had the honor of participating and recognizing and working with members of our DAV group, our National Guard group, because as you well know, part of our Freedom Blast, while it's a fun event to come and enjoy crafts and entertainment, music, fireworks, that it's also a wonderful opportunity to celebrate and honor veterans in our community. We will be again hosting the Veterans Walk and recognizing veterans in our community. It is truly a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. We were able to introduce that to our community this morning, and again looking forward to that. So please make sure that your calendars allow you to participate in the Freedom Blast Festival here on the City Park grounds. The CPW Fats, Oils, and Greases public meeting that we had requested. That meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 5th. You received some printed information concerning that as well, but we wanted to make sure that you have that on your calendar if it's your intention to attend or participate in that event. Again, that is on Wednesday, June the 5th. It'll be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the CPW facility over on McCall Street. We also had an opportunity last week, and we have another upcoming opportunity to receive additional information concerning the inland port. We had a wonderful opportunity here at City Hall last Thursday evening as members of the South Carolina Ports Authority and also members of Norfolk Southern Railroad came in and met with the neighbors of the Victor community. It was very, very well attended. There were a number of questions that members of the community had. Many of those we are still assisting them to make sure that they get answers to those questions. But again, it was a great opportunity that we were able to host that, to bring those folks in to try to get answers for that community. If you continue to receive inquiry or input from members of the Victor community or surrounding the inland port site, please help us by making sure that we are aware of the information that they're trying to obtain. We'll make our commitment to keep you informed and in the loop of what's happening with that, but we also want to make sure that members of that community stay informed and are in the loop and getting answers to that as well. Again, we know that there'll be some follow-up information, and for the community on a larger scale basis, those folks have agreed to come back, and they'll also be bringing representatives of the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and we'll also have representation of CPW and the utility work that will be taking place in that area. But we'll be hosting a larger community meeting, giving information about what to expect on the site of the inland port, what those operations should look like, what we kind of referred to last Thursday night is what should people expect to see, hear, and smell as a neighbor in that area. So we'll be looking for them to give us more information. That will be on Friday, June 28th. We are confirming with them now the time of that event. We'll have some additional information that will be coming out, but we will be hosting that at the Cannon Center. And again, it is a meeting open to the general public. It is a meeting for the entire community to learn a little more about what will be taking place with that meeting. I did share with you earlier, but I also want to remind you that we will be participating through the Municipal Association's summer meeting in providing a bus tour that will be here in our community. They'll be spending some time over in Travelers Rest, and then the remainder of their time they'll be spending here in the Greer community learning a little more about downtown revitalization. They'll be learning some about the rehabilitation of the Cannon Center from the National Guard Armory facility, and then we'll also be sharing information with them about the upcoming inland port site. They'll be touring our community and having lunch with us at the Cannon Center as part of the Municipal Association's annual meeting. So that registration is out now to your colleagues from around the state, and we're looking forward to a large crowd coming in and spending some time with us here in Greer as we prepare for that. Obviously, this evening will be a busy evening for us. We have prepared and have many of our staff on board with us this evening to give you additional information in a workshop setting concerning the 2013-2014 budgets, and we'll be presenting that at the conclusion of your meeting tonight. In executive session, we would like to ask for your consideration for two items that I would have in addition to any items that you may have. One would be an economic development matter that we would need to get some direction from council on how to proceed, and then also a contractual matter concerning a potential property sale of property that is owned by the city to a private third party. So those are two items that I would like to ask for your consideration, one economic development, one contractual at that time on your agenda. That concludes my report. As you can certainly see, because of our budget workshop, all of our department heads are with us this evening, and as you reviewed your department activity reports for the month, we again encourage you that if you have any questions, our staff is available to answer any of those questions you may have either now, after this meeting, or at any time following that you may, as you're reading those reports, need some additional information. We're always available to you to answer those questions. Those would conclude my remarks and my report at this time, and of course available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. We'll move to appointments of boards and commissions. Information tonight regarding terms that expire at the end of June, and we will deal with those as they come before us this evening. We have one in regards to the Airport Environs Planning Commission. We'll have a opening there, or a term expiring on 6/30/2013. This is Mr. Dewey Tarwater's term that will expire. We have been notified as well, too, that there will be another opening that council will appoint as well to the Environs Commission. That commission has one representative from the Greenville County side and one representative from the Spartanburg County side. We have been notified that the current member from the Spartanburg County side has moved his residence and is no longer positioned to serve. So we will consider two appointments to the Airport Environs Commission before 6/30/2013. In addition as well, too, we have a position that will expire on the Board of Architectural Review. Mr. David Langley's position will expire on 6/30/2013. These are 3-year terms. We'll urge you to consider that position on the Board of Architectural Review. Going to skip over right quick the judge's appointment because we've got him with us this evening, but I want to mention as well too, in terms of consideration as you contact these folks and others regarding the vacancies, Planning Commission, District 2, Judy Jones' term expires 6/30/2013. District 3, Morris Burton's term expires 6/30/2013. And District 6, Brian Martin's term expires at 6/30/2013. Those are all 4-year terms. I'd ask that you contact those folks regarding their desire to continue to serve or not, and probably one of our department heads in regards to planning and zoning functions as to attendance records and other things of concern in that regard. So we'll look for action items on at least those 3 commissions and boards, hopefully at our next meeting or one of the meetings in June. But we do have before us this evening Judge Hank Mims. Judge Mims' term will expire 6/30/2013. This is a 4-year term as well too. Judge Mims has served as our municipal judge for a number of years, and we have invited the judge to be our guest this evening and to take a few minutes to come before council and tell us a little bit about what's going on up the street in the courtroom. And we always appreciate his time and insight. And with that, Mr. Judge, we're going to turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and Council, Mr. Jiggers, Madam Clerk, good to see all of you. I always like to come here to give me a chance to brag about my court and my staff. Actually, it was a long time ago. Next year, it'll be 20 years. There's a relationship change about a year after I started, but about almost 20 years ago, the judge then, I had a hearing in his court, and when the hearing was over, he said, "Mr. Remington, I see you in chambers." When the judge tells you that, your reaction is, "Oh." He said, "I'm going to leave in Greer, and I'd like you to consider being a judge out there." Well, I received a call from the mayor and the city manager back then a couple of days before. He invited me to lunch. I still hadn't connected the two. Apparently, it turns out I was independent. And again, my reaction was, oh. I figured if they were running me out of town, at least they were going to buy me lunch before they did. Anyway, I told her, sure, I'll take it for a couple of years. And like I said, that was almost 20 years ago. And so for the first time in a long time, Greer had a resident judge. And the difference was we had a judge who had a vested interest in the success of the court and the success of the city and the success of the community. And that was the approach that I took. As some of you know, the first thing I did when I got there was got rid of the receipt book that said Greer Police Department. I convinced the folks who worked at the court that we're not part of the police department at all. We call the balls and strikes, and we just flat don't care what well, officially we don't care what the result is. We tend not to voice an opinion anyway. I will also tell you that through the administrations that I've seen, one of the consistencies has been that City Hall has stayed out of my court, which is much appreciated and different from a lot of cities, I kid you not. Now, I practice all over the state, and so I get to see a lot of courts. The mayor will call and tell you who's guilty and who's not guilty. And in some of those courts, the judge will listen to them. But that was the deal I made when I came here. If you stay out of my court, I'll stay out of politics. And it's worked out pretty well so far. It's a court of which when I tell you I'm proud of that court, it's an understatement. I've been to a lot of courts, and as all of you here have heard me say before, it isn't just the facility, it's the folks that I got down there. I invite you, I invite any of you to come to the court. When you come to our court, it doesn't matter who you are. We are not respecters of persons, as my wife would say. When you come to that front window, you will be treated with respect, or you will be run off. You will not have a job. I will guarantee you that. And my clerk has the same attitude. We had a guy come to the window the other day. I mean, this guy was, shall we say, a piece of anatomy. And he gave Colette down the road. And you would have thought that her sainted mother was at that window. She made, not even a turned up eye that he could see. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because we are a customer service organization. I'm not telling you, nor have I told them, that means they're supposed to be disrespected. But if somebody disrespects them, they got a little fat guy back there they can come get. And if that doesn't work, then I got a little fat guy with a gun back there that I can go get. When I tell you that it's an ongoing process, we met with the chief and some of the other officers the other day about security. As you know, City Hall, city courts, and other buildings and places are a symbol of city government. And it'd be a mistake, I think, for us to say, well, we're in Greer, and so nothing's going to happen here. That's ridiculous. And the chief agrees, and of course my clerk agrees, so we met. And there are some things that we're just kind of tweaking. Some obviously I can't discuss in a public forum, but it's things like, well, already we do a sweep before and after court, just going through, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be, and there's nothing that's not there. We're talking with the chief and with the clerk about doing video arraignments. It seems like a small thing, but what would happen is, instead of them having to use personnel to bring them from the jail down to the small courtroom, sometimes you're talking about, I guess, 4 or 5 people at a time. We do it by video arraignment. They never leave a secure environment. There's a judge in South Carolina who was doing a bond revocation, and for whatever reason ended up in the room by herself with the defendant on this side, his wife on this side of the CDD case. And apparently he didn't agree with going back to jail. And he jumped up and beat the devil out of his wife, took the bench and shoved it and pinned the judge, who was a female, up against the wall. And had it not been for the fact that a bondsman happened to be there and interceded, well, we could have had an awful serious situation. And so what we're doing with the police department is addressing those issues now on an ongoing basis so that we don't have those kind of situations. I will tell you this, and I told the chief the other day, I was at a meeting, and part of it was for courtroom security, because there are so many events around the country. And I got to tell you, when you sit there and they're doing this PowerPoint telling you what needs to happen at a court in terms of security, what the cops need to do, what you need to have in place, when I'm sitting there, I'm going, got that. This isn't little Greer. We've got a system here, guys. And I can't tell you how proud of it I am. We are still having an interpreter for every session of court, because we've got, as you know, better than I, a very large and growing Hispanic population, which is primarily the interpreting that we need done. Although there's a thing called the language line. So we've had Portuguese, Vietnamese, and some language I didn't know. Well, we had one a couple weeks ago I didn't know existed. It was some obscure dialect from, it wasn't actually Spanish, but it was from some part of Mexico. And we were able to get that done. Now, if you don't mind, I'm not going to leave without telling you about my staff. We have one of the best staffs in the state. And like I say, I go all over the place trying to practice law. things that, we've got some unfunded mandates from, for example, from the Supreme Court, where we don't have a choice. You gotta do it, but we didn't give you money to do it. Well, I should say, you guys didn't get any money to give us to do it. But we gotta do it nevertheless. We're on top of it. Like, for example, the automatic expungements. We're on top of it. There are some cities which I don't know what's gonna happen when it blows open, because they're just, you ask how long it's gonna take on the expungement, and their answer is, I don't know. And that's wrong. We have less staff than a lot of other courts, but our court kind of works kind of hard. I really wish that you guys would stop by me sometime, see what we do. But don't stop on Tuesday or Thursday when we're just kind of doing clerical stuff. Stop in on Wednesday and see what's going on down there. But I think you'll be pleased. I think you'll be, if you take the tour, I think you'll be excited in the investment that you've made down here. Now, as I said, it's been 20 years almost, and I'll probably stay till you run me off. But I'm hoping that the tradition will be that whoever is the judge is going to be somebody with an investment in the city, at least attitudinally, with an investment in the city and its people. I've mentioned to you guys before this notion that Mr. Driggers came up with a while back. When I told you, I also told you that if he weren't here, I'd take credit for it. Notion of kind of a quality of life court. The full-scale thing has never kind of got off the ground, but I like the attitude, the approach of it. The notion that you do that bundle of rights you get when you buy your house, for example. Well, you get to enjoy that without having a pit bull eating on your kid's ankle. And that's something that I think it's kind of like, well, we were going down the street and Juliet saw that's my bride, saw some trees and some flowers on a median. And she said, that just kind of adds to it. Well, if you're secure in your property and you've got the city back and you're up in that security, it makes it a better place to live, don't you think? Say yes. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to do was to thank you guys. This has been just a super, super opportunity. Obviously, when I go to BILO or the commission or the power, I'm thinking about the practice, but the judgeship has been rewarding. There are a lot of folks, a lot of young folks in our city who got kind of nudged back because at this level we can take their time to nudge some of them back. There's some all I can do is lock them up. That's just it. A large number are kind of like me and you. The mere fact that they got caught, you'll never see them again. But you got some of you just take your time to kind of nudge them back. And it does take a little more time. But by taking that time, you and I don't pay for it in terms of incarceration or court time in General Sessions Court. And I think it's one that is well worth it. But I appreciate your trust. I appreciate your support as a supporter of my court over the years. I'll answer any questions.
Counsel, any questions or dilemmas for the judge you want to pose to him this evening? Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Folks, as you can tell, going to one of the judge's sessions of court is sort of like a visit to Lake Weebegone. It is a mixture of justice and down-home humor and sometimes a little one-on-one discussion with somebody about what they need to do with the direction of their lives. And Judge does an excellent job in administering all those things along with his staff, and we're appreciative of all the efforts and all that he does for us. In addition to serving as our municipal judge, he is is a practicing attorney as well too, and is also open to advice. I have never been to him that I needed insight or direction or some understanding about something that he hadn't dropped whatever he was doing to help me out. And so with that, my hat's off to the judge, and same goes for his staff. Y'all do a wonderful job, and we appreciate all you're doing over there. And I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to help you with the police department after all those jokes you cracked on them, but other than that, we appreciate it. From the boards and appointments to the boards and commissions, we'll move to items of old business, the first of which is the second and final reading of annexation ordinance number 13-2013. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Dillard Creek LLC, located on Westmoreland Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of R15% property. Mr. Pace?
Mayor and Council, this did go before the Planning Commission on April the 15th. Public hearing was held. They did have quite a few members of the public show up for this hearing, most of those being in the Woodland Hills community adjacent to this property. They spoke in different perspectives of the development as far as traffic concerns and densities and those kind of things. But through our mapping program and other things, we were able to address those concerns in a satisfactory manner. And Planning Commission did vote unanimous to approve this rezoning for this particular property.
Council, this comes to us as a second reading. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion or questions of Mr. Pace. Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, yes, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Second and final reading of annexation ordinance 16-2013, an ordinance to provide for the annexation of properties owned by James Stevens McAbee, Sabrina Ann McAbee, and Sandra Harvey McAbee, located at East Sugar Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of R12 for said property. Mr. Pace?
Mayor, if I can, I'll go ahead and address item B and item C. Old business, as these two are related. We did have public hearing at the Planning Commission on May the 20th. No one spoke in favor or in opposition to either of these requests, and Planning Commission did vote unanimous to recommend approval of zoning for these two properties.
Council, in regard to ordinance number 16-2013, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions of Mr. Pace? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, yes, Mayor Danner.
Yes. We have the second and final reading of ordinance number 17-2013. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by James Stevens McAbee, located at 741 East Sugar Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of R12 for said property. Comes with a recommendation of staff and the Planning Commission. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions of Mr. Pace? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, yes, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, the last item of old business is the second and final reading of annexation ordinance 18-2013. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Rolling Hills at Willow Creek, Phase 2 LLC, care of Jimmy Cox, located at 1705 Abner Creek Road and 0 Abner Creek Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of R12 for said property. Mr. Pace?
Mayor and Council, again, Planning Commission held public hearing on May 20th. There were a couple of adjoining property owners that were at the public hearing, and in relationship to screening and densities and other couple of issues, Again, however, we were able to, maybe not 100% satisfy those requests that they had proposed for us, but the Planning Commission did vote unanimously to approve the recommended zoning of R12 for those properties.
Comes as a second reading. Do I hear a motion to receive?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Questions of Mr. Pace or comment?
Did they decide that they're going to be able to, once they bring the plans to us, we'll be able to decide on those plans? I know that was one of the concerns for some of them.
The plans for the actual subdivision have been submitted and also were approved at the same Planning Commission a little bit later in that meeting. But they making some modifications even to what they've recommended as those proposed development issues, but they're adding some amenity area to that currently.
Thank you.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, one item of new business this evening is the first reading of ordinance number 19-2013. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Mac Copeland located at 95 Old Woodruff Road from R7.5 residential to C2 commercial. Mr. Pace?
Mayor and Council, to make you familiar with this piece of property, this is located at 95 Old Woodruff Road at the intersection of 26th Street and Snow Street. It kind of sits in the fork of the road there. It's an older commercial building that's been there, again, for quite some time. It has provided met to that community at one point. However, as you know, it's been vacant for quite some time, and Mr. Copeland has recently purchased that property and would like to open a restaurant. However, in looking back at zoning records, we could find no records of it ever being zoned commercial for that particular piece of property. And he has requested that zoning to make that property conform to what he would like to do with a restaurant. And no one spoke in favor or in opposition to his request. We did have a couple of phone calls, but once we told them what was going on, they had no responses other than that works fine for their community. I don't think anyone's here present representing them tonight. They were out of town, and I told them that shouldn't be an issue. Planning Commission did recommend unanimously to approve the zoning classification change.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or a representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? For the record, let it be noted, no one indicated so. Entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, floor is open for discussion.
Glenn, so I'm clear, that's I guess a light brown brick building?
Yes, sir. Sits right in the forward area. It's probably got 12, 15 parking spaces in front of it.
Built maybe in the 60s or 70s?
Appears to be by construction, yes, sir.
Wasn't it a general store or something at one time, back many years ago?
To my
Some sort of
knowledge, since
little
I've been
service
here,
center?
I don't know. I don't think it's been occupied.
Oh, really? Okay.
It operated as a restaurant for a number of years.
Yeah.
It was a
And that-
hot dog restaurant.
Right.
Well, maybe, but it just never got zoned.
Never was zoned property.
No, sir.
I didn't know if it was a
Property was
snack shop or
annexed in
convenience.
1953, and then from there, the zoning for Victor was changed on a couple of occasions as a whole, but this property was never singled out to be different.
I suspect somebody may have lived in that upper portion and ran a lunch counter on the lower portion probably. Other questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, yes, Mayor Danner.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thank you, sir. Council, in executive session, we've got two matters to consider. One is an economic development matter, one is a contractual matter. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert, yes, Mayor Danner.
Yes. For those of you that would like to stay, we will conclude our meeting when we get back and then follow that immediately with a workshop to discuss the 2013-2014 fiscal budget year budget. Council on executive session, we've considered two matters, one economic development matter, one contractual matter. We've taken no action in either regard. I hear a motion to adjourn from executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis.
Yes.
Ms. Albert.
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Having no further stated business in our regular meeting, I'll call it to a close. And with that, I will call our workshop to an opening. We'll now convene in a workshop setting for the stated purpose of reviewing the City of Greer 2013-2014 fiscal year budget. With that, I'll turn it over to the administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, we'll spend a little bit of time reviewing some of the data relevant to the new budget. The process that I would like to try to use this evening is one, is to make sure that we answer your questions. As you've had an opportunity the last 2 weeks to review the information that has been presented both through the transmittal letter and as well as having the printed budgets. We would like to spend the time this evening looking at those all of our budgets, and we'll do that in a format of presenting that to you as data, and then of course answering questions, looking at those that have variances that we consider to be significant variances, as well as answering questions you have. Many of you have called, some have emailed, and we have attempted to get answers to you very quickly in response to those questions that you've had. If I haven't heard from you yet, then I'm hoping that that's a good sign. But at the same time, we certainly recognize that you may have questions and margins and all of those things, and that's what this process is all about. Obviously, we'll spend some time this evening looking at all of our fund types. The general fund is the general operating budget of the city, and that's obviously where we'll spend probably the bulk of our time because it's the day-to-day operations of the city and how we operate within our respective departments. We'll also look at the Recreation Program Fund, the Debt Service Fund, the Hospitality Taxes Fund, the Stormwater Fund, the Facilities Use Fund, the Road Paving Fund, the Public Services Fund, the Lease Purchase Capital Improvement Fund, and the Real Property Revolving Fund. You'll notice, or you may notice, that the Real Property Revolving Fund is a new fund that we've added to our list of funds this year as far as what we're presenting from budget. We've always operated and you had a real property account. Now we're establishing it more as a fund as we would budget dollars in, dollars out to that. I will not revisit much of what is in the transmittal letter. We covered that 2 weeks ago. You see that information, but we will try to highlight some of those those items that were addressed in the transmittal letter and how they are affecting the respective budgets as we move forward. The general fund, again, Fund 11, $18,497,661. That's that budget that we spend our day-to-day operations with. If you'll notice on the screen, you'll see the history of our general fund budget. We've taken a 10-year snapshot of that budget. You can see pre-2009, we were seeing steady growth in that budget. As we approached 2009, we were having to make some really difficult decisions. You're very familiar with that. Everyone that's on council today was here as we were experiencing that as well. So we know what we kind of had to do to get over that hump. As we move forward into our projected budget for 2013-14, you will see that we are now not quite at the same level, but approaching where we were at the height back there in 2009. But this again is demonstrating the 10-year shift in the budget over time. Revenue, current revenue allocations, where those dollars are coming from, property taxes, franchise fees, general government, transfers, interest, those types of things. But again, really taking a look at and reminding ourselves that unlike what we would typically see either through a county operation or through a school operation, typically those folks are operating almost at 100% of their revenue being generated by ad valorem tax. In a municipality, we have other sources of revenue, so just a little over 50% of our revenue coming from ad valorem tax. And that's been pretty consistent for us over the years. Our revenue history, looking at where our revenues come from. This graph is again giving you some demonstration of how those dollars will apply to us based on the source of revenue. At any time as we're presenting any of this information, if you have a question about any of that, please stop me and we'll make sure that we are addressing that as well. When we look at our tax-based revenues, we see that the largest amount of our revenue comes from the Greenville County side. Our growth has been primarily on the Greenville County side on ad valorem taxes as well. Spartanburg has seen some growth over the years. You can kind of see where we have an upward tick. That's typically in a reassessment year for Spartanburg County. Other than that, those revenues stay pretty constant on both Greenville and Spartanburg County. To automobile taxes, those stay pretty constant for us as well. But again, growth for us, tax-based growth for us, tax-based growth has primarily been on the Greenville County side. And that's been traditional for us, again, over this 10-year period. We can certainly see, as we're looking at property values, the number of households that we have on the Greenville County side, the Spartanburg County side, almost 11,000 households, almost 17,000 automobiles that are registered respective to the two counties. Assessed value for us now just over $97 million in assessed value. That number has continued to grow over the years, as the graph indicates. We're seeing about 3% growth each year in that area. Budget growth compared to our millage rate has stayed pretty constant. We can see that we had a small decrease there in 2008. We were able to maintain a relatively stable rate there for that 3-year period. Then when we came in, we implemented the 5 mills, 3 of those for operational expenses, and 2 of those for fund balance replenishment. That was the 5 mill shift that we saw there. Staying constant then through what's being projected in 2013, 2014. So millage rate staying constant and has relatively stayed constant throughout the 10-year period as our budget has continued to grow. Again, what that simply says is that increase to tax base has funded the largest increase to those increases to the budget. Our property tax millage, we take a look at this slide each year, really looking at the value of a mill, recognizing the cost to a property owner of a $50,000, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 home. You can apply that less or greater depending on the value of the home, but this just again for demonstration purposes showing that the owner of a $100,000 home is going to see taxes at 97.8 mills will cost about $391.20. Average cost home for us is in that $120,000 range. We have a large number of homes that are in that $50,000 range. We have homes in our community that are in excess of the $200,000. But on average, the mean is somewhere right in about that $120,000 number. Tax revenue, those 97.8 mills, we are projecting that will generate $9,344,000 in 2013-14. The value of a mill, $95,542. Business license revenue, local business license versus that which is collected by the municipal association. The blue line are those local collections. You see that we've had a little more volatility to that over the 10-year period. Good growth in those first 5 years. We saw a decrease over the next 3 years, or next 2 years really. A small uptick as then we were starting to approach back into 2011. Increasing again, a little bit of a decrease in our budgeted numbers for last year. We are projecting those a little bit higher. And I want to make sure that as you, I think a natural question would be, if we are anticipating revenue higher in the current year, why would we then project it a little bit lower in the budgeted year? And the reason for that is, you may recall that we had a new business in our community. We discovered that that business was not paying their business license tax. We did an audit of that, and we were able to collect that. They paid 3 years in arrears, and they paid the current year as well. So that gave us a bit of a windfall that we would not project going forward. And so that's the reason that you see that shift that will happen there.
We also tinkered with the rate a little bit on commercial, was it?
Well, we made an adjustment to our business license scale that we did a declining rate for our larger manufacturing industrial businesses. We were really, as we looked at that and the effect that it would really have over time, there were only about 2 large manufacturers that would have impact to us immediately. So as we would continue to move forward, if we acquire more larger producing businesses, because again, that break was the first break was at 50 million. I think the first break was at 50 million, and we don't have a lot of $50 million businesses.
Seemed like the number when we did that was somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000. That was all that was going to be the net result of that.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. But very important to Greer Development Corporation, very important to send the right message that as industry looks at locating in our area, that we have a very aggressive, very competitive business license scale for those larger producing type businesses, for larger segments.
So it's really not a decrease, it's just coming off that windfall. So that was a question of mine.
Well, the windfall, we are collecting that. So when you look at the projected revenue for the current year, we will collect probably about $200,000 more in the current year than we are projecting to collect next year.
Right.
And that is because we discovered through the audit process and got them to pay the 3-year prior and the current year, but all of that revenue fell into this year.
Gotcha.
And that's a one-time situation. Now, for us, fortunately, it's a one-time situation that the revenue is a windfall and it's up, because sometimes that happens relative to like the municipal association, where we'll have that type of thing happen, but it may be a settlement of a lawsuit and we'll see that happen as a decrease.
Right.
But for us, that's not the case. But we wanted to make sure that we were giving full disclosure of that, because I think, again, a natural question would be, if you're going to, unless something's moving out, all indication is that business license should be improving. Why would we collect it this year when we wouldn't collect it next year? That's the reason. It was a large manufacturer that we discovered through an audit process, and we collected 4 years of revenue in 1 year. That's why. The red line indicates those revenues from the municipal association have been staying pretty constant for us, and we would anticipate that to remain the same as well as we continue to move forward. Budgeted expenditures, we've always acknowledged that personnel and personnel-related expenses are the largest portion of our budget. This reflects those current numbers. Personnel-related expenses, operational expenses, and debt have always been the lion's share of our budget, and we're pretty much in line with where we've been in recent years, and we'll show how that compares as well. As you look over each of our departments in a pie chart scenario, you can see where those dollars are being spent relative to the police department, the fire department, all of our departments. This is the breakdown and the piece of the pie that each of those consume to make up our total general fund budget. Bar graph is really just showing that a little bit differently, but again, you can see that our largest department, largest number of personnel, largest expense is related to the police department, and then you can see how that breaks down with each of our departments as well. Same data, just presented in two different fashions. Personnel budget, comparing that to the total budget, we know that is something that we continue to monitor. We are not at the highest that we've been over the 10-year window that we're looking at, and we're not at the lowest. We try very hard to keep those numbers in that 60% range. This year we're at about 61.5. Again, it's not the highest it's ever been, it's not the lowest it's ever been. It does fluctuate from time to time. But when we do our comparative data, when we do our strategic workshops in January, February, we do that comparative data to the other 15 cities that we do our comparative data to, and we always compare extremely well to that. Some are much larger, but this has been a number that has worked relatively well for us in trying to do that. It's not an absolute, but we wanted to make sure that you were seeing how that number can shift. And there's a little bit of shift there from 2010, 11, 12, as we do the 13, 14 budget as well. But again, at 61.5% of the total budget related to personnel. As we looked at the last year budget, we were at $18,068,259. That budget that we are currently in, it had an increase from the previous year of $479,884. That was a 2.73% increase, requiring 97.8 mills at that time as well. In this proposed budget that you have before you, it's at $18,497,661. That is a $429,402 increase, a 2.37% increase from the budget that we are currently in. So the current budget to proposed budget, 2.37 as compared to the prior year, the growth was 2.73. Both of those budgets requiring the 97.8 mills that we are currently assessing. General fund revenue is where I'd like to spend a few moments talking with you at this time. If you would open your budgets to the general fund, that's the thicker, larger one, obviously. A couple of items that I wanted to really draw to your attention. Again, this is Fund 11. It again is the one that's at the $18,497,661. Not large variations to many of the revenue items. We certainly, if you've got any of those marked, we want to address those. But I call your attention over to page 2. The very first one, line item number 4028, engineering fees. You can see that this year we are budgeted at $25,000. We are already to date at $47,182, and we are projecting next year, or recommending that number to go to $56,000. That's a great indicator for us. If engineering fees are up, then that means that we're doing more plan reviews, more inspections. This is really the plan review side of things, and we're seeing good growth there. Much of this, obviously, is relative to the inland port and things that are happening out there, but we believe that we'll continue to see this level of growth. But that's a pretty significant change, a variation from prior year or current year to what we're projecting in the new budget as well. Another that I call to your attention is a little further down the page, line item 4046, state aid. You will see that we are projecting $417,300, or that's what we were budgeted, $417,300. We actually think we'll collect about $550,000 when all is said and done this year. But we do have a directive. Part of our financial strategy is that we are decreasing that at a rate of 10% a year. So that 10% is coming off of the $417,300, taking us to the $375,000. All indicators right now, again, the General Assembly is still meeting. There's 2 weeks left in Columbia. When the Senate passed or did second reading of the budget last Thursday night, about 10 p.m., their budget now is in line with the House version of the budget, putting us at pretty much the same level on state aid as we would have been the previous year. So again, we would anticipate that collections will be higher, but we are trying to wean ourselves off of that state aid, and we're doing that at 10% a year. So that's why you're continuing to see that decrease there. Even though the revenue is coming in, we're wanting to be less dependent on funds that get debated every single year in Columbia. On page 3 of 4, if you will look on line item 4096 under police fines and forfeitures, that is another line item that we're continuing to see a decrease. We're projecting or had a budget of $285,000. We're projecting that number to come in at about $209,000, significantly low compared to our budget. We've been monitoring that for some time. Our fines and forfeitures have continuing to be decreasing over time. As you are well aware, one of the reasons that is occurring is because state assessments are increasing, and every time state assessments increase on that, what then is the proportionate share of what's returned to the city on fines and forfeitures, that becomes a declining amount. So we think that number will be a little bit less, so 285 in the current budget to 234 in the proposed budget. That's a hard number to assess. It's one of those, what's so important to recognize is that we don't have a goal, we don't set quotas. It's based on the day-to-day operations of the police department, and at the end of the year, it is what it is. What's processed through the police department in fines and tickets is then processed through the court, and then however the court handles it is what then gets assessed, and then what's paid. We have very, very little control of that, but we do want to try to accurately reflect it. Again, projecting $234,000. Significant as well is line item 4155, the COPS FAST grant. We've had some additional information. My transmittal letter gave you some information on this as well. That is a revenue source under that old COPS grant. The $141,000 will no longer, those funds will no longer be made available to us. So that goes to zero. So that's a decrease in our revenue stream. We approved, you approved at our last meeting for us to apply for an additional COPS grant. Those dollars are not appropriated in this budget because we don't know if they'll be allocated. We don't know if we'll be awarded a COPS FAST grant. That's the first thing. The other is, and if we are awarded, we don't know when that award will be made. And if it is made, we don't know how long it will take for us to ramp up, advertise, and hire those positions from July 1 to June 30th. In communicating with police chief, our agreement is that if there are resources that are needed to fund any portion of that, because you know it's a 75-25 program, we would need 25% of that in the first year. We will make line item adjustments as necessary to allocate those funds in 2013-14 if those become available. If not, and we receive the grant, then we certainly will have that fully funded in the 2014-15 budget, but it was really impossible for us to project those numbers at this time. They would just simply have been inflated numbers if we had put those in the budget at this point. But it is important to note that the old COPS grant is exhausted, it's gone away, and those revenues are gone.
What's contained in the police miscellaneous number there?
Of the 61,600, thank you. Right. That is a large variation.
If you look on page 1, about halfway down the page is miscellaneous income, item number 4116. The expected revenue this year is $122,000. We're budgeting $50,000 for next year. We are reclassifying revenue that we were receiving for police services for our events, putting it in that police miscellaneous rather than city miscellaneous.
Security services that we would have relative to events in the park, events here, events at the Cannon Center, that we collect through those folks that are renting the facilities or that we're paying for a public event. like a festival or that type of thing. Thank you, I did miss that. And then, of course, you'll see that there's a shift in the fund balance appropriation. We are, as indicated in the transmittal letter, I am recommending that some of our larger capital items be funded through fund balance appropriation as non-recurring expenses. But that's why you'll see it was an adjustment of the $95,161 as an accounting adjustment for the amended budget, but going from $95,161 to $194. Significant change there as well. But again, only designating those funds available for non-recurring capital items. Some capacity being made available to fund balance from that decrease that we are budgeting for in state aid. That was one of the things that in your planning sessions you indicated that we should start using those dollars, if we receive them, start using those more for non-recurring capital expenditures versus general fund recurring operational expenses. And this in part uses those funds for that as well. Okay. Those are the highlighted numbers on revenue. I certainly ask if you have any of those marked that you needed some additional information on. Okay, very good. And we can always come back. We'd like to take a look at the general fund expenses. We'll run through these department by department, but certainly not line item by line item. There are a few that I particularly want to draw your attention to, but there may be others that you, again, have notes that you would like some additional information. No significant changes in Department 410, that's Mayor and Council. Not really looking at making any type of significant changes there. But if there are any questions, we're certainly glad to address any of those. No significant variations. When you go over to page 2, as we're starting with city administration, I would like to give this information at this time. Again, it's contained within the transmittal letter, but to provide you some information that will apply to each of our departments across the board. As you're looking at salary and benefits across the board, each of those, again, as indicated in the transmittal letter, I am proposing in this budget that we would include a 2.5% cost of living increase, but it is awarded on a merit basis, which means that we will go back and look at the performance of each and every employee. That will be reviewed by our HR department, by the department head, and by the immediate supervisor. If an employee is performing at expectations, if they are performing at the level that we would expect them to perform, then they would be eligible to receive the 2.5% increase. If we have an employee that is performing below expectations, if we have any performance indicating issues that we need to address, then we certainly reserve the right that we could do that at an amount less, including none. And that's not unusual, that we will use that as a tool in evaluating the performance of our employees, that if we have someone that we're needing to kind of get their attention, we certainly use that as one of the means to do that. But that applies across the board. Also, as we indicated in the transmittal letter, we have some adjustments that are there relative to the retirement system. There are some increased costs on the police and firefighter side that we're having to absorb in there as well. In the transmittal letter, I've detailed some new positions that we are requesting in this budget. And again, those are outlined in the transmittal letter, and there are no changes to that at this time. And we certainly can review those by department as we would kind of go through department by department if you have additional questions concerning that. In administration, Department 411, I'm on page 2 of 19. Not identifying any significant variations to line items that are there. But certainly, again, if you have questions on any of those, we would certainly like to make sure we're answering those.
My question is, the increase in salary there is larger than any other department by my calculations. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if it's larger than any department.
Percentage-wise, that's what I'm saying.
Well, it has cost associated with the IT position.
Now, one
So
new
every
IT
department
tech.
doesn't have new
Right.
positions, so it's kind of hard to look at department by department.
Well, that's what I tried to do, is break down the percentage and put what new hires were coming. So a lot of that new increase is going to be the new IT tech.
Well, I don't know that 100% of that is there.
Brief huddle.
Oh, well, well, I realize that. Absolutely. One of the adjustments that are there as well is the contractual agreement that you made with me several years ago, and we're in the last phase of that contractual agreement as well, and that's reflected there.
Right.
That, along with the new position with the 2.5%, that's the numbers. Thank you for your discretion, Mr. Slaughter.
On line 0579, communication and marketing,
Yes.
is that Steve's salary?
That is not salary. One of the, in our strategic planning session and council's retreat this year, one of the things that was identified was a desire for us to include some additional dollars for marketing. And by marketing, what we really believe that those dollars will be used for is advertising for some of our events. We've been operating on a shoestring for a long, long time. We can continue to do that, but we do believe this budget allows us to put some dollars there to promote things like Freedom Blast, the movie series. Most of these would be related to events, but there may be some additional dollars that could be for some other marketing. We've had some requests that we may want to do some pens and pencils when folks visit schools, those types of things. Those are not high dollar items, but there's been nowhere in the budget to be able to pull that type of thing from. So any type of branded items would come from this line item, as well as advertising.
I'll go ahead and bring it up here because it kind of is a theme through all the departments. If you compare under workers' comp what you estimate it will be for this budget that we're in now compared to the recommended, there's a huge increase in every department.
From actual budget or where we're projecting year in?
Where you're projecting
Yes.
year in.
All right,
Is that because we just did really, really a lot better this year than we thought we were going to do, or?
Well, one of the
Or
things
you project next year worst case scenario?
You always project worst case
Yeah.
scenario. That's the very nature of workers' comp, is that you want to always fund. This is where your traditional safety bonus has come from. You fund at 100% of the anticipated cost. If you have cost savings, that's where we've come in and we've retained half of those cost savings. We've awarded half of those cost savings back to our employees in the form of a safety bonus.
But we're not, that's not in there this year, right?
Well, we don't project that we will have as good of our experience modifier for our workers' comp will not be as low as it has been in years past because we've had higher incidents and higher claims. Therefore, it's going to be a higher cost to us, and therefore, if it's a higher cost to us, it reduces what that safety bonus could potentially be. Other factors, David? Any other? Primarily as we budgeted at 100%. And again, you're exactly right. You'll see that across the board in each of the departments. If I can call your attention then to page 3, Department 412, Municipal Court. If there are any questions there, we certainly want to address those, but no significant changes that you'll see there. You will see that we did add some department overtime, and again, we indicated that in the transmittal letter. That's been kind of an unfunded expense, and we felt that it was necessary that we know that they're going to have some project overtime inside the courts department, and so we appropriated dollars in the budget that were not there before for that.
The increased bench services fees, is that included in salaries?
Yes, it is. That is in the salary line item. There will be an adjustment for the municipal judge and for the assistant judges in this proposed budget. We've not had an amendment to their fee, because again, it's a contracted fee schedule. The last time we made an adjustment was in 2006. It's been a number of years. Judge Mims did make a formal request this year that we would consider an adjustment to that. He had made a similar request last year. We were unable to do that at the time, but this year I felt that the numbers would allow for that increase to take place. And again, that's an hourly rate that's paid to those folks based on the amount of time that they spend on the bench. It's not a salary, it's a per hour basis. Okay. Other questions relative to municipal court? Very good. Then we will move to page 6, general government operations, and this is kind of a catch-all for those things that are not directly related to a specific department but affect all operations of the city. Our retirees are in this category. That's what you'll see there under employee benefit package on that first line. That's a cost that the underwriters will take a look at, and they'll tell us this is the amount that we need to fund that retiree benefit to our already existing retirees. On that first page, I'm not noting anything of significant change. You will see there's an increase there in rent to Greer Trust. That's line item 285, but that was a planned increase, as we will recall. When we did the ramp up for the debt relative to the police and courts building, this building in City Park, it had a very finite schedule. We knew exactly how that would ramp up and then start to ramp down over time as well.
On line 278, on
Street lighting.
Street lighting?
Yes, sir.
Is that what we pay in utilities or what?
The amount that's there is simply for lighting the fixture. That is the utility cost of lighting the fixture. The $20,000, it would be for new installations, for actually purchasing the fixture. Our agreement, the long-time agreement, it's something I guess has been in place for, gosh, no longer than I've been here, is that when we request a new fixture, we purchase the fixture. The arm, the light, we purchase it, they install it, and from that point forward, they maintain it. They'll replace it, they'll repair it, they'll change the bulb. But then from that point forward, for that new fixture, we pay the utility cost for that light and all the other lights. So that is only for street lighting. That is not our recreation fields or any of that. That is solely for commercial and residential street lighting.
And that was which figure?
The $475,000 is what is budgeted. Other questions on general government operations? Okay, good. On page 8, the fire department. Not noting any significant changes, but there certainly may be some that caught your attention from an operational standpoint there. In the salary line item, again, as indicated in the transmittal letter, we are recommending one additional firefighter be added to our existing staff. Our primary intent there is to meet our contractual obligation with Helen Batesville, and then of course that person would assist us with relief for Station 1, Station 2 on a periodic basis, but we're trying to satisfy our obligation with Helen Batesville for our joint use contract.
I did have one question on page 7, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The wellness committee.
Yes, that is a new expenditure. We have always had a safety committee. Last year we implemented a wellness committee as well, primarily to assist us with trying to promote good health habits, eating habits, relative to our insurance cost. That committee was not funded in any regard, so the committee themselves actually came and met with me and asked for some seed money to be able to do some things, to purchase some materials, to offer a couple of lunch and learn type programs for our employees, and that's what those dollars are for. I think we were actually spending about, David, I'm going to say $300, $400, $500 that would come out of the safety committee side of things to try to help them a little bit. But I was very excited that the committee themselves came with a program of work and said, here are the things that we would like to do, but we would need some additional funding to be able to do that. Long term, I will certainly say that I think that would be a return on investment many times over, because the more that we can do to promote a healthy workforce, the more that we're going to reduce absenteeism, the more that we're going to reduce cost relative to a self-insured insurance program.
Back to the fire department.
Yes, sir.
What is it we're renovating this year?
Oh, under the cash capital?
Right.
Keep on.
That's due to the overrun cost of the concrete aprons due to the water problem that we had at Station 2. We were unable to do the epoxy coating of the bay floor at headquarters, or reseal the asphalt at Station 2, or replace the vinyl stair treads at headquarters. That's what it's going for, those three items.
We had hoped to do that this year, but because they're the ones that prevent us from doing that, so we're trying to move that forward.
Okay.
Very good. Other questions? Volunteer firefighters stays pretty constant, but it could double, it could be half. It's a call volume generated expense, and but this is traditionally our numbers have fallen very well in line with this, and that we would think that the 15,000 is safe to move forward with that as well. Police Department on page 11, department number 435. I'm sorry.
Go back to the volunteers.
Yes, sir.
On line 23, South Carolina retirement. What is that expenditure for?
On the volunteers through the retirement, they don't have that figured out.
Line 23?
Yes, sir. The prior to, I guess, last year, part-time employees were not required to contribute to the retirement system, and we notified all part-time employees now be contributing. That's really the worst-case scenario if all of the $15,000 were paid on a salary basis rather than per diem call basis. That would be the retirement that would be allocated to it. If you look at the salary line item, the projected is a little over 16,000. So that difference would cover that difference if it's per diem dollars rather than salary.
And prior, the retirement system would not allow those part-time folks to participate in the system. What they actually do now is then it is now the employee's choice. That's why the worst-case scenario would be if everyone chose to do that. But it would be those part-time employees, they now have the option of saying yes or no. Most choose no. But we would anticipate we would have some, as we've had some expense this year for some.
And that's new this year.
Well, we've had some expense in this past year, but it changed after we adopted the budget, and that's why we had some expense. Okay. Police Department, budget department number 435, beginning on page 11. Any questions relative to their expenses?
2 new part-time, right?
Yes, one is administrative clerk, and I go back to and the other is the CID, Criminal Investigation Division clerk, records clerk, CID clerk. We do, and obviously you approved, and we are all hoping that the COPS grant will come through. And if that does indeed occur, then we will be adding 3 additional uniformed officers to the roles there as well. Funded on a 75% under the COPS program, 25% on us. Again, we have not budgeted those dollars at this point because of timing. We don't know when those dollars may be necessary.
On page 12, you got $33,900 for computer maintenance. Is that new stuff or is that old stuff?
Relative to the police department?
That's the Greenville County charges for computer services, which we use
We use the report writing system for Greenville County, and we have to pay a quarterly fee to them. They're also projecting next year that they're going to require updates to the system, and we are required, since we're on their system, to make all the updates. That's projected about $10,000 for all of our Greenville computers. That also includes our service contracts on our data work system, which is our booking system in the jail, cancel system, which reports all calls coming in to 911 and dispatch, and to our new evidence system. Those are a lot of the service contracts to cover those.
We, in the past, didn't have service contracts where that cost us more money every time we call for service. It was several $1,000s. It's a lot cheaper to have a service than it is to not have a service.
And of course, the alternative to us would be to operate our 911 communication system completely independent of any relationship with Greenville County. And all the analysis that we've ever done in the past and continuing is that the value that we receive from them is greater than what we would pay to try to do that on our own.
What stood out to me was the drastic increase over the past figures for that. Is that a lot of stuff we've taken on in the last year that we're supporting now?
The upgrades that we're going to have to pay for.
And we previously didn't have that support, that's what you're saying. Okay.
And of course, service upgrades become more and more expensive each time the contract will renew, and the longer it's been since a new version of a software has been installed, or a contractual on any of the hardware that they may have as well. Any age of that or versions of that expense gets higher, and we find that across the board really in all of our applications because there's a lot of licensing that we do. Technology is an expense that truly 15 years ago we didn't have. And today it is a large part of the total operating expenses of the city relative to technology.
Just as a point of curiosity, how is your ammunition supply? I mean, can you readily get what you need?
We have what we need. We can get what we need. Fortunately, Greenville is willing to give us a certain amount of ammo, whether they pay for it whenever we need it. I can look for them for rifle ammunition. That's the hardest thing to get at this time.
That's good.
Okay. Other questions? Very good. Moving forward to page 13, Public Services, Department 445. The caution that we have here is, do remember that the way that the Public Services budget is funded is that 60% of their budget is funded through the general fund, 40% of their budget is funded through the enterprise fund. So we break that out in the budget up front. I think the only staff changes there, we have a part-time employee that we are recommending to move to a full-time status in that department.
I've got a question that actually pertains to public service along with recreation. I know that they work in conjunction, or they both mow grass, whether it's on the right-of-ways or parks. And our parks can be inside the parks and on our right-of-ways. And on occasions, especially like right now, we're kind of behind. Do we know what kind of dollars it would take so we would not be behind, so we could be more, you know, as I've always said, polished?
If it's right-of-way maintenance, I mean, I'm assuming it's more right-of-way maintenance versus parks, but maybe not.
But
okay. I think the simple answer to that is if our desire is to mow more frequently, then that's a resource issue. We did not propose adding. We are adding some staff in the recreation department. It's right about 40 hours of part-time. I think 38 hours. Does that sound right? 38 hours part-time. So that will assist with that. There'll be some assistance on the public services side in going from part-time to full-time, but I don't know that would satisfy being able to do more frequent rotations either in parks or on the right-of-ways. Wade-Hampton Boulevard is a good example where we contract Wade-Hampton Boulevard. We actually pay that through a third-party contractor to maintain those beds and to mow on a contracted schedule for there. I think anything could be improved upon if we allocate additional resources. It's just a matter of where you put those resources. So,
well, we do have additional part-time help this year, so.
We do.
If I could just clarify too, and again, we haven't got to my budget for staff. The staff, we were proposing to increase those hours. They don't know. They do here at City Park. We're proposing and asking for an increase in hours in the part-time staff that work here at City Park on the weekends, so we can achieve more because they also take care of City Park and downtown. But it's not for the crews that actually go out and mow the parks. You know, whether it's Century or Country Club, it's not for that. We do have an increase, a proposed increase for a custodian that takes care of our 3 recreation facilities. And then we have the kids clinic custodian, so we can actually have somebody there more hours from Friday to Monday to actually help take care of that facility. So, but it's not proposed.
Other questions? Recreation, Department 450 on page 15. If you've made any notations or questions relative to the Recreation Department, we'd certainly like to address those for you. Any additional information you'd like to provide?
The staffing, I think, was one clarification, so I don't have anything else unless
Any questions? We can certainly come back if you think of a question. Department 451, Building and Development Standards. We are reorganizing within that department, and you are aware of that. We've been attempting to keep you informed of what's happening in that budget. Some of that is relative to, again, the transmittal letter, to the staffing changes. We are being able to keep those staffing changes. One of the things that you asked of us as we were making changes there, that if we could keep any reorganization of that department within the existing budget that was there. And we've been able to accomplish that. We've just been able to move staff salary dollars around to restructure somewhat of that operation. So as you are aware, we had an employee that has recently retired there. We will be replacing, our intent is to replace a position in that department that is an administrative assistant position, and then we would have an administrative clerk also within that department. One of the things that will help us most with is it then allows us to, particularly relative to nuisance abatement, that our officer is not handling the processing of that material. They are actually on the street making cases, bringing that information in so that we have support staff then that can process that, get notifications out. We think that we will see a great increase in visibility for our nuisance abatement officer by being able to do a little restructuring there as well. It allows us to provide some support services to the city engineer, support services to the building official, and support services to the planning division in that department as well. We feel strongly that we can continue to do the good things that have been happening within that department, but we can do it in a little different organizational structure. But we've been able to keep those dollars pretty consistent with where we were prior. Questions about the operational expenses for building and development standards?
Well, as a general question, do you budget, for instance, line 280, excuse me, 282, utilities, you have 61,000. Is that, you base that on the amount that they occupy?
Prorated share of this facility. Yes, sir. We do that on a square footage basis for this building. Other questions? And again, welcome to come back to any part of that. Certainly addresses the expenses associated with the general fund. I will go back to revisit my transmittal letter, and in that I indicated that I wanted to provide you with some additional information concerning the request to establish an employee bonus program that would be awarded to employees on performance of the organization in the prior year from audited numbers, and that bonus pool would then be awarded to employees based on longevity. I've had a couple of questions. I've had a couple of you that have asked if I could show a little modeling of how that works. So I want to take a couple moments to give you a couple of examples with that, how that could potentially work. The way that I have it written in ordinance form, that you'll have in a couple of weeks, the ordinance, I didn't read the exact language, but what the ordinance says is that the council authorizes the administrator to establish a bonus pool, and in that bonus pool is funded by having excess revenues over expenses as audited for the prior year, less any allocation of replenishment to fund balance. That's the 2 mills that you're allocating. So we know that off the very top that no bonus can ever be considered until we break the $180,000 threshold in last year's budget. Next year, because the value of the mill is going up, that threshold goes from 180 to 195. Moving forward, that threshold will continue to get larger over time. But as long as you have an allocation of dedicating millage to fund balance replenishment, that comes off the top, and we acknowledge that. One of the scenarios that I'd like to have you take a look at would be one that the employee would be able to receive the benefit of the full bonus. And again, this is going to be based on the budget that we're in now. We finish this fiscal year June 30th. Auditors come in, they take a look at our work. We see if we've come in under budget on expenses, if we have revenues exceeding the expense. But let's say we come in this year at 3.5% under budget. If we have a 3.5% where those dollars then would go to fund balance, that would generate $650,000. Out of that $650,000, we know that $180,000 comes off. That's the replenishment and fund balance. So at that point, there's $470,000 that's available. The ordinance that I'm proposing to you says that 470 then is split 50-50. That 470 then becomes 235,000 that's available to the pool, and 235,000 that is designated back into fund balance. And I know I'm standing in front of it. I'll move around so you can see that. We indicate that there's a maximum of 2% of the budgeted dollars for payroll. In the current budget that we're in, 2% is equal to $145,428. That's 2% max. It should not exceed 2%. That then leaves us a balance of $89,572. We've got the $235,000 that we've already designated that we can't touch. We bring those two numbers together, giving us $324,572 that goes to fund balance. So again, 3.5% under budget gives us $650,000 of available dollars. We take out the 180, which is reserved, gives us a balance of 470,000, half being made available to the pool. The pool cannot exceed 2%, that's the 145,428. That number then, the 145,428, goes into a spreadsheet, a mathematical formula, that we then have a minimum for all employees that if the bonus is made available, it's $50 for all part-time employees, $100 for all full-time employees. So if someone's been employed with us for 9 months, then they would not get less than $100 in this scenario. The longer that an employee has been employed, it's a longevity bonus pool. The longer that you've been employed with the city, the greater the share of the bonus that you receive. You can only receive the bonus as long as your last performance review was at or exceeding expectations. If you were below expectations, the merit part of that kicks in and you would be ineligible to receive any part of the bonus. So merit paramount, must be there, meet or exceed expectations, and based on the number of years of service, obviously a 25-year employee would receive a larger percentage of that total, of that 145, than an employee that's been here for 1 or 2 years. In this scenario, 2%, that averages about $100 per year. So, a 10-year employee could get a $1,000 bonus. A 2-year employee could get a $200 bonus. A 5-year employee could get about a $500 bonus. A 25-year employee would get a $2,500 bonus. This is a program that I have been really waiting for a number of years to try to bring forward. It is very similar to what you would find in an industrial setting, When I was in manufacturing, we called the program Gain Share. In this particular example, because of our environment, it's a little more of what we would call profit sharing. But because we're a governmental entity, we don't have profit or loss. And that's one of the reasons that I would recommend that half of that always be retained, the fund balance, to be used discretionarily, and then putting a cap on it there. So that's the scenario of what could happen in a 3.5% scenario. But that's not always going to be the case, and we certainly recognize that. So I wanted to also give you an example of where that can shift and be a little bit different. Let's say that we don't come in 3.5% under budget, but we are able to come in 2.4%. Makes the numbers change a little bit, 2.4%. If we do, then we're coming in $450,000 being added to fund balance. Again, those dollars that are dedicated to fund balance replenishment must come off the top. That gives us available $270,000. That has to be divided 50-50. Gives us $135,000 in each pool. Because we cannot exceed the amount available, nor can we exceed 2%. We obviously can't get to, in the other scenario, that $145,428. In this case, it would be less than 2%, but it would equal $135. This 135 stays the fund balance. Obviously, that's now going to zero, and we're posting 135 to fund balance. Again, cannot exceed 2%, but it cannot exceed 50% of the available funds. So that's a scenario where it can be less than 2%. If it's less than 2%, all we do is we take the available dollars, whether it's the $145,000 for 2%, if we're fortunate enough to get there, or it's $135,000, or it's $35,000. Whatever that number turns out to be, we plug that same number into the spreadsheet, and then it is distributed based on the seniority or the longevity of the employee, and then it's distributed based on merit as well. Only being awarded if the employee has their last performance review was at or exceeding expectations. Questions about that? And we can run scenario after scenario. Obviously, if fund balance is less than $180,000, the pool has zero. So the benchmark would have to get past whatever you were dedicating to fund balance replenishment. Get past that, then you have to meet the threshold of 50-50, not to exceed 2%. There have been many years in our financial statements as we have finished that this number would be zero. There have been years that that number could be full 2%. And we've had everything in between. So we've had zero, we've had full availability of funds. I sincerely ask Council's consideration for allowing us to implement this type of bonus program. I think it's innovative. I think it rewards employees that have a long history with us, but it doesn't reward folks for being able to survive. It rewards employees for being good performers. Good performers and weathering the good times and the bad times with the city. Again, I think it's innovative. I think it is the overused cliche of thinking outside the box. It still is performance-based, it's merit-based, but it can only be awarded when the funds are available to award it. Very, very similar to what we would find in the private sector outside the public sector. This is pretty unheard of. I've talked to a lot of folks in the public sector, and I have not been able to locate anyone that does this type of program. There are some variations with some bonuses that are out there, but I've not been able to find anyone that really does it this way. We floated the idea with our employees to kind of see if there was an equity issue, and overwhelmingly the comments that I have received, as you would expect, a 15, 20, 25-year employee thinks this is great, and I think you would expect that. But they appreciate it, and that's what I heard most from our most senior employees, is that they thought that it was a wonderful way to recognize longevity. But what I overwhelmingly heard from our younger employees is that they thought it was fair, and they thought that it allowed the ability that as they continue to grow in the organization, then the opportunity was then there for them, based on performance of the organization, the opportunity then was there for them to be able to get a larger piece of that pie going forward. And so a 2-year employee who says, yeah, I may, in a full funded system, I may get $200. In a half funded system, I may get $100. Or in a no funded system, I get 0. Because 0 is 0 to everybody. But any other distribution is based on that seniority. I'd like for you to think about that. I'd like for you to continue to look at how that would be implemented, whether there are issues or concerns for us. I feel strongly that the financial ability for us is there to fund this type of a program. I hope that your experience with me over the years has been that I would not propose this to you if I did not feel that we had the financial means to support it. I have held this in my pocket for a number of years, but I do think the time is appropriate to bring it forward, because I believe we have the ability to fund the program. I think it would be extremely appreciated by your workforce, for employees, that there would be times that there may not be any ability to have a salary increase, but there could be the ability to have a performance bonus. Good performance, I believe, should be rewarded. This gives us a tool to do that. So I'd like to ask your consideration. Any questions at this time?
Is that unbroken service?
That was hard. We do have a few examples of some employees that did have broken service, but that service met our personnel policy of that they would not be, for seniority purposes, considered to go back to 0. I'm trying to remember, I think our policy says 6 months. I think if they leave and come back within 6 months, I think that's what the policy says, then they are treated as if they did not leave from a seniority perspective. And that's how we've calculated anyone here. If there's separation, if they worked for us and they left for 2 years and they came back, they started back at 0. But we follow our current personnel policy on that, the amount of time for separation. And we had about maybe 4 or 5 we had to take a look at to determine where they would fall. I do think it's for full disclosure, because we do have salary that affects a lot of folks. In this program, I am not enrolled in this program. You have a contract with me, you have an agreement with me in how you handle my compensation. I believe that is outside of a program like this, so I am not included in the spreadsheet for this program, nor are you, because your compensation is set by ordinance, and there's really no way that could be implemented any other way. So for our good folks in the media that may ask who are affected by that, these are our part-time and full-time employees that are not elected officials, and they're not the chief executive officer of the organization as well. Okay. Special funds. The first that we would like, I've got these in order of the fund numbers. So if we could please, the first one that you'll see will be the Recreation Programs Fund. This is Fund, yes, Fund 9. The thing about the Program Recreation Fund is what we're trying to demonstrate in that fund, $168,350. These are the programs that operate under our Parks and Recreation Department. The soccer program, the football program, the baseball program, the cheer program. Any of those things that we charge a fee to participate in those programs, we collect that fee, we deposit it specifically for that activity, and then we record the expenses associated with that as well. We know that some of our programs don't operate on a sole break-even basis. Some of our programs make a little bit of money. Some of our programs lose a little bit of money. But the objective for us overall is that it's a break-even basis. So the program fund, the Recreation Program Fund, is a pass-through fund. All monies that are collected by the Recreation Department, again, are deposited. The expenses associated with running those programs are being expensed out of that, and at the end of the year, it should be a break-even basis. David, anything to add particularly to that? And it can vary. If we get sponsorship for the Martin Luther King weekend greater, then we may have expenses greater than we had originally anticipated. But again, the expenses are directly related to the revenue that's being produced. Questions on the Recreation Program Fund? The next is the Lease Purchase Capital Improvement Fund. I'm going to ask David if he'll step forward. We'll work through the Lease Purchase Fund. All of our department heads, this is the one line item that we really wanted to go through specifically. We may not do it line item by line item, but all of our department heads are prepared to address any lease purchase that they are requesting. The first thing is we're prepared to take a look at this. I wanted to call your attention to this particular slide. One of the things that we recognize that pre-recession, we were typically through lease purchase borrowing around $1 million a year, $1 million, $1.2 million. We were it would go down and up a little bit based on what was happening. We knew that as we were getting into the recessionary period, that number needed to drop substantially back. We were able to keep that number low for a couple of years. It started moving up a little bit here. We started to kept about the same, moved up a little bit, and then this year you can see that we're at the $1.2 million mark. Well, you know, as you look through the lease purchase, there's a single item in there that's $490,000. Has a big effect of that. If that item is not there, then that item would drop substantially back into line with what we were doing here. A concern that I have relative to lease purchase is that in this period here, we were maintaining our equipment at a rather consistent level. When we did here, the level of maintaining that equipment, replacing equipment, reduced substantially. What we will find that starts to happen is we start getting into this period of 2013, 2014, 2015, then the material, the equipment that we purchased back over here is now becoming completely depreciated and obsolete. We're starting to wear out some of that equipment. Now, a lot of that, this is variation equipment. We're from one extreme to the other. One may be a $490,000 fire truck. The other may be a vehicle that's purchased for $22,000, $25,000, or lawnmowers, or whatever the case may be. So the depreciation of those will vary by the type of equipment that it is as well. But I do offer this as a caution that obviously every expense that we have needs to be scrutinized, and we want that to happen. We have justification for what's inside this budget, but please be aware that we are starting to have equipment that we purchased way back here and even further back, that equipment is now completely depreciated off of our books, and some of the maintenance costs are starting to get higher to operate some of that equipment. So we'll look at lease purchase. David, can kind of walk us through that one, please.
Might need some water. Thank you, Mr. Driggers and council. Mr. Driggers has covered the revenue portions on page 1 of 1, that is 1.2 million, that you see on the revenue side, and that is the amount we're proposing to borrow to cover the purchases for this fiscal year. Turning to page 1 of 5, we'll get into the expenditures. Starting with department number 410, that's the first section at the very top of page 1. 410 is the council's department. There are 2 expenditures there. One's for computer and equipment, the other for monitors, total of $24,500. Let me pull my notes out so I can explain what those are. The $14,500, as we have continued to increase our coverage on the website and on the cable channel, we have done a test of the live broadcast and found that the server that we're running on, it's an older server that we just tried to put into service, does not have the capabilities to sync all the inputs coming in together, so the audio and video, starts looking like a foreign movie sometimes where the dubbing is off. So the $14,500 is a server upgrade for the video production to produce the live video feed from the council meetings. And then the second expenditure there is trying to improve your viewability of presentations rather than having this TV on the side and straightening your neck up here. We're proposing to put monitors that will be inside your desk there, and it'll have a glass cover. We're able to view through it, and it'll be smooth, but you'll have your monitor right there at your desk.
Do we really want to have live broadcasts of council? I don't see the point in it. What's that?
14,000.
I mean, if we go to executive session for an extended period, it's going to be pretty bad stuff. Unless you're going to have entertainment in the interim. Jim, get up and sing. I just don't know that that's a necessity.
That is certainly a decision that you can forward to.
Now, there may be other events that would be
that's
worth, you might want to do a live broadcast from from Freedom Blast or something like that.
Right.
While I certainly understand we may choose not to go to a live broadcast, and that's certainly feasible. But one of the constraints that we have even in the delayed broadcast is that the choppiness that we continue to see there as well. We have to make some equipment upgrades to be able to get that out as well. It will accomplish both. It makes it smoother for a live broadcast, but if you now, having lived a council meeting, you may never go home and watch it on cable channel. But if you do, you'll notice that the transition and the quality of that is not the best that it could be. And we do think that it needs to be improved.
I've watched it and I agree it's not the best that it could be, but it may be the best we want it to be.
It may be.
Any other questions there? Next department, 411, the city administration. You got a vehicle digital ID system and computer equipment there. Any questions there? Okay. Moving to department 412, again, some additional computer and equipment in municipal court. Any questions there? Hearing none, we'll move to general government. That is 419. About 7 items listed there. A lot of them technology related. We'll be happy to field any questions you may have on that.
Whenever I see that, I just assume we're improving whatever we're doing.
So a lot of it's replacement, some of it's improvement, adding additional services.
Does that include the parks Wi-Fi thing in that?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think so we talked about
It's in this version of the budget that you have in front of you is line item 838, it has wireless downtown.
Yeah.
We've kind of included all of our wireless projects in that line item. So we will be changing that name, but that does include extending the guest wireless to the parks.
Fiber network.
That will be bringing in Stevens Field and City Stadium into our network. Right now, there are no network services out there. We will be extending the network out there. That will allow for security cameras, telephones, that type of nature when we have staff out there working. Any other questions on general government? The next department is the fire department, number 422. Mr. Greer has mentioned the pumper fire truck there for $490,000. The other items are fairly typical of their normal requests. Any questions there?
What is the $28,000 vehicle?
4x4 pickup truck, replacing 2003 pickup truck. And that also includes the lettering and lighting that would be added to the vehicle.
The pumper truck is replacing one in service now.
Replacing on the,
Chris, would you come forward, sir?
It is replacing, we're taking out one of the older 1988 model trucks, didn't pass pump test, and then as of this afternoon, or 1991 hasn't passed pump test. So it is taking out a reserve truck that was used primarily for training. I had to spend a lot of money, the pumps tore up on it. But it will be a first out truck going to Station 2. It's purchased in this budget.
So this truck would become number 1, and we would take the 91 and relegate it to the backup. Is that basically what we're taking 88 out of commission?
Yeah, the 88 we took out of commission, and we would actually have a 2001 that would be going into reserve with the 91 also.
Things don't have a good shelf life, do they?
You know, 26 years is pretty good life on a fire truck, you know, so.
Not for that kind of money in my
Our equipment may cost a little more, but it's not replaced every year. That's the thing, yes.
That's true.
Any others in the fire department? The next department is the police department, 435. Any questions on that section?
How many vehicles do we?
Okay. In the question from both sides, in the vehicles, 160,000. If I remember, it's 7. There are 7 vehicles planned for that purchase.
Chief, I think you and I talked one time about different vehicles that are out there now. Are we planning on staying with the GM model, or are we looking at everything that's out there?
We budgeted for the GM for the Impala. We have 6 Impalas and 1 SUV. What we're going to try to do is go and purchase locally, which that's why we have 160,000. It's only 20,000 plus for state contract. But if we go city for our local, it's going to be an extra 5%, at least 5% more to purchase those vehicles. If we put 160,000 in that portion of the budget, and make us so that
But you're solely looking at the GM model and not because what you and I had spoken about was the new vehicle that Ford has out there is nothing but a police vehicle, and I think the highway patrol is operating some of those now.
right, it's much more expensive than the Impala. And the Impala was a police equipped model with the heavy brakes and the
Does Dodge or Chrysler offer a similar model?
Specifically, they use the Charger, but that's about $3,000 or $4,000 more. And locally, we've been having a hard time trying to meet the requirement of 5% over. Finding a dealership that's we're going to make an attempt to see if we can buy local.
And for information, the equipment included in those vehicle purchases includes the in-car cameras, radars, the in-car computer modems, and then additional vehicle equipment. All of those are related to those new patrol purchases. Any further questions there? And next we have Public Services, Department 445. Several small purchases, no big equipment this year for them.
What's wrong, Skipper?
He was being a team player for the fire department this year.
We'll work together.
Explain the portable AC.
I told him to be prepared.
No problem. Very, very large, like a shop fan, water cool, cold, little cool air in. Supposed to be around 15, 25 degrees cooler air. And back in the mechanic shop in the very hot part of the year, all we're doing is circulating hot air. There's no air conditioning back there. There's no air office or anything like that.
David, where's the money we had set aside to do the new apron out there? Where did we have that? We talked about doing the new apron at the OC.
That's in, ultimately we paid for it. That's transfer from the general fund going to the real property fund, and then the real property fund would make the payment. Yeah, that type of expense would not qualify for lease purchase. Okay, next department will be recreation. That's number 450. Biggest expense there is the mower for $23,000, and then some signage for $30,000. If you have any other questions there, we'll fill those, please.
And didn't mean to scare you. The digital signage. The digital signage, where's that going to go?
We're proposing that we could use it in a lot of different locations. It would be a portable digital sign, similar, I guess, to the police department, but larger, where we can actually put our logos on there. It'd be more of a branding for us, but we could use it to advertise all of our events here at City Park or at tournaments involved, at the ball fields, or we could do, or any department could use it for any type of, just to let the public know we have something going on. I do want to say something, and it has to do with, you were talking about mowing the grass. And you'll notice we have amount in here for a mower. And I hope that's going to help with that issue. Again, it is a resource issue for us. You know, not so much personnel, I guess at this point. We're going to try and address it with the equipment, because they're sharing, you know, different mowers. So while they're using it at Century one day, then we don't have it to use at Country Club or Suber or Stevens and City Stadium. So it's traveling. So you almost have to wait. If it rains, it backs us up. We've got one mower, one Kubota that could actually handle the inclines in a lot of these common areas in these fields. And that's why we're asking for another mower, so we can be more efficient in what we're doing. Just want to clarify that.
Okay, any other questions for recreation? Okay. Last department is building development standards, number 451. It's one furniture purchase. Any questions about that? Any questions overall?
And as always, as questions come up, as we work through this process, please let us know, and we'll continue to get answers for you. Debt service fund, almost kind of like the recreation program fund. It's money in, money out. Debt is what you previously approved. These are old budgets. But the good thing about our debt service fund, I want to call your attention to the slide, is that it's always a good thing when you're reducing your debt. And we certainly are being able to do that. But there's good and bad in reducing debt. Because what we find is that where we were purchasing, again, we look at the same 10-year period, we were purchasing larger amounts of capital items through this purchase. Also has some GO debt, some other things. Debt was ramping up for us for a period. We kind of peaked here in this area. That's about the exact same time that we stopped, and we cut our capital purchases in half. And then you start to see that the debt starts declining after that as well. Well, what starts to happen is that as you're funding your debt, that amount starts to decrease. You start to absorb those dollars into other areas of the budget, and then it becomes harder when you need to make those capital purchases that you desperately need to do. So it's kind of I won't say a vicious cycle, but it certainly is a cycle that we have to keep in mind. One of the things that is long-term for us is that we consider that our debt payments and our capital purchases relative to lease purchase, the more consistent that we can stay with those and plan long-term for what items. In a year that we purchase a fire truck, that's not the year that we would purchase large equipment, say, in public services. Or it's not where we would purchase large equipment in another department. I feel very confident that next year, if you fund this lease purchase at that level, you will see that that budget will come in at a similar amount in the next year, but you'll see other equipment starting to make its way to the list that we very intentionally held off this year. So there becomes a very intentional process of replacing capital items over time. Our capital improvement plan then becomes a rotational type system where we anticipate the life of an item, we purchase it, we bring it in for the life of the item, and then at the expiration of the life of the item, we've prepared for and planned for it to go out, for something else to come in to replace it. We'll keep our debt consistent, and it keeps our capital consistent as well. But that's the reason that you see the variation directly related to what we did back in 2009, 2010 for capital purchases. But the debt service budget that you have, again, those are the items that we have purchased in years past. This is the debt schedule that's required. The lease purchase that we do, we typically only fund that in the fourth quarter of the current year. So it doesn't have a significant impact to us in the current year, and it starts to have greater impact in subsequent years. But the way we have that planned is that as new debt comes on, old debt is rolling off. And so we're trying to do that for smaller items, vehicles, those types of things. We're financing those for 5 years. Large items like a fire truck, we're pulling those in for 10 years. So the schedule for those will vary a little bit based on the depreciation of that particular type of equipment. Any questions about the debt that we already have funded that you see in the budget there?
By the way, Dave Ramsey would say there's no downside to reducing your debt service.
And I would say that I absolutely agree with that in managerial accounting. I do not agree with that in governmental accounting.
Where you replenish it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't have a depreciation fund.
Yeah.
And most industry, most business has a depreciation fund that's how they're funding without going to debt. We borrow very cheaply.
Right.
So it really works better for us. I won't say 100% because I mean no interest is better than some interest, even low interest. But because we're able to borrow at such low interest and doing it from a governmental accounting perspective,
It just makes sense to do it.
it just makes sense to do it. It really
Well, and I would like, I know 6 or 7 years ago we talked about setting up some type of a schedule where when you buy a piece of equipment, you say, okay, that's going to last us 7 years. So you schedule 7 years down the road, 6 or 7, that you're going to have to replace that. I would like to see us eventually get that type of a system just for consistency and prediction. You know?
I absolutely, our financial strategy, our financial plan says that's one of the objectives for us to move toward, is developing a depreciation schedule for all capital. I only know of one city in South Carolina that completely funds their capital through a depreciation account, and that's the city of Aiken. I've asked as many people as I know, but that's the only one I've been able to locate that 100% fund it through a depreciation schedule.
But you know, a good recession really throws a monkey wrench into that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You have to back up on everything.
You have to back up on everything, and then you end up using, and it's not unusual for folks that if you have those types of reserves, it's not unusual that if there's some catastrophic event, that those are the funds that you go to take those funds.
Well, and that goes right along with the fund balance or the savings, I like to call it, that if we continue to feed that fund, then the next time that rolls around, we won't have to make such tough decisions, we hope.
Absolutely. Our objective is to get our fund balance to 35%. That's our financial strategy the council adopted. We're not there yet, but we're growing and we're getting closer to that number. It's prohibitive to do it all at once, but we are making good, steady progress at improving that position. And at some point in time, as this community continues to grow, we will have needs to go out and do general obligation debt. When we're able to do that, the stronger our fund balance position, the better credit rating we'll get. And therefore, the lower that we'll pay to borrow money when that's necessary for us moving forward. We are a growing community, and those needs will be for us as we continue to grow. And moving forward, this is just the opportunity to position ourselves the best that we can be when we get there, when we get to that point. Any questions on the debt service? Very good. Hospitality taxes. This is, again, a fund that we know is coming in from the food and beverage, prepared food and beverage. And mostly out of hospitality, we pay debt. We started including the performance of the hospitality fund in the financial statements. So you are now on a regular monthly basis, you're seeing how that performs. Revenue for that projected at the $1,488,800, with most of that coming from the hospitality taxes, all but about $800 in interest. So I don't think we're going to make the budget on interest for that particular category. I prepared a slide asking us to take a look at the growth of the hospitality fund. We saw good, steady growth in 10 years back, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Good, steady growth. When we were budgeting hospitality at one time, we were actually anticipating about 9% growth annually in that fund. We were able to take on some additional debt, take on some projects out of the hospitality fund that qualified. But obviously you can see that as we got into the 2009 period, and with every one of these slides, we know 2009 is a changing point, either revenue or expenses. And that happens across the board for everything that we have. But hospitality started just kind of leveling out, and we actually saw a decrease. In the next year, we had another decrease. We saw an increase as we came into 2013, and we think we'll continue to see some increase there. That funded at about 3%.
3 or 4, I need to count.
3 to 4? Okay, 3 to 4%. So we are seeing some growth there, but the debt that we already have on hospitality doesn't really give us much capacity. So when you look over to the expense side of the hospitality fund, you can see that it's primarily funding those things that we have done in the past. One of the bigger increases is our allocation to our Freedom Blast event, budgeting that event last year at $10,000, moving that allocation to $20,000. As we're aware, we no longer have a signature or a title sponsor for that event. It continues to be sponsored by the city, and that's the reason that we're needing some allocations there. The art series is the music series, which was Tunes on Trade, which is now Tunes in the Park, I think is the name of it. That's funding that program there. We do have some special contracts for maintenance that we pay for out of the hospitality fund. We were able to maintain funding for the Family Festival as well, and you can see the other allocations that are identified there. Designating about $21,000 into fund balance reserves. That enables us over time that we would have some dollars to do some smaller projects. An example of that we think would be appropriate could be the parking lot project where we've purchased the home and we have the grass area beside the parking at Central Park. We do need to get in and get that rocked, eventually get that paved. We're ready to go ahead and get it as a gravel lot. Next step for us would be to get that as a paved lot. This is where those types of dollars could come from. The need that we have at Century Park for the replacement of the concession stand, the bathrooms, the press box area that's there, that need is much greater than we anticipate that we would have funds available in this fund at this time. So we're going to need to look for some other resources because to demolish that building and replace that building, we're looking at $250,000 to $300,000. So when you're looking at putting $20,000 to reserves, you just don't have the capacity to do that yet. But if we continue to grow, as we're anticipating, as we saw from 2012 to 13, and we're anticipating 13 to 14, as some older debt will go off as we're moving forward, then we would have some ability to do some bonding. And I think that's where we have the greatest ability in the hospitality project, whether it's parking or facility, not in the dollar amount, but taking that annual increase to the budget and then dedicating that to some general obligation debt for that type of project. So we are aware of some of those types of projects that need to be out there, but we're going to look for direction from you as we continue to work with strategic planning about where we need to look for park property, where we need to do park construction, improvement, any type of facilities that we may look at under our parks master plan that we've adopted previously as well. So the hospitality fund just hasn't given us a lot of opportunity. It's just been pretty constant for us as we've continued to pay the debt that we've already borrowed. But we'll get to the end of the life of that over the next several years. It'll open up some capacity for us, and we'll be able to do some additional things. But questions specific to those items that are identified in the hospitality budget. Very good. Stormwater Fund, Fund 19, is the next fund I will draw to your attention. We're going to request an amendment to that budget. We're looking to decrease that budget. The worksheets that you have that at $804,255. We've had an opportunity to really sit down and look at one of our larger purchases, and that is the flusher vac truck that we fund through the stormwater program. We are recommending that we reallocate some of the budget dollars for what we anticipate would be some increased maintenance on that vehicle, but we believe that we can delay that purchase at least another year. Not 100% confident that moving forward that I would recommend that we would do that as a cash purchase. It very well may that we would fund that the way that we originally funded it when we purchased the equipment, and that was through a lease purchase arrangement as well. One of the concerns that I have in doing a transfer, so if you look at the revenue dollars, you'll see that it required $157,855 as a fund balance appropriation. And that's the as that fund continues to have excess revenue, it's an enterprise fund, and that's what it's intended to do. So if we would have an expense larger than the revenue stream that it's bringing in from collections, that is naturally where that would come from. We again believe that we can delay that purchase at least one more year. So we are recommending that we remove that $157,855. We would take that to zero. And by doing that, that would make the revenue for this at $646,400. If you go to the expense side, you'll see a corresponding decrease that if you go down to line item 348, it says flush vac truck, $262,782. That line item would go to zero. We would reappropriate some of the capacity then up at the operation of vehicle. That is line item 170. We would recommend that that line item be changed from $5,000 to $25,000 because we are going to have some expenses associated with that truck this year. Mr. Airwood made a very good point of reminding me that $20,000 in repairs are a lot cheaper than $200,000 in purchases. And we've taken that to heart, and we really do believe that we can squeeze another year out of that vehicle, and we think that will enable us to do that. It also gives us the ability on the stormwater projects. You'll see that that number is funded at $100,000. We are recommending that we use that as the balancer, and that would go in at $184,927. We will make these amendments on the budget for first reading in a couple of weeks, but we wanted to make you aware of those amendments. Again, operation of the vehicle from $5,000 to $25,000, stormwater projects from $100,000 to $184,927, and completely eliminating the purchase cost of the flush vac truck, that $262,782 to zero. Again, balancing the expenses to the $646,400 that we would project as the revenue, and not using any of the fund balance for that fund. So we know that's some changes that we're kind of throwing to you for the first time this evening, but any questions on that or any of the other expenses associated with the stormwater? I've graphed that as well, and as we made the amendment to that, we were able to take out the spike that we saw in the current year, and you can see that the stormwater account properties have continued to increase the number of parcels. We've continued to see some steady increase in that, not changing the fees, but the number of parcels. Some of that's due to us refining some of the data that we have, but we do think that as we'll kind of peak out in this area here based on the number of parcels and the current rate, and that would have been the difference of funding the truck and not funding the truck. So we are amending our original proposal to you to exclude that and that brings that into a much flatline expenditure.
Hey, did I read somewhere that Greenville County has increased their fee?
Perhaps. I'm not aware of that, but I don't know that.
Raise their garbage fee and their stormwater fee.
The city of Greenville.
City of Greenville.
Right.
City of Greenville,
Yeah.
okay. City of Greenville I thought you meant Greenville County.
Well,
Yeah, City of Greenville,
That's
my
where I read it.
understanding is that they
City.
raised their garbage fee and they raised their stormwater fee. Yes. Questions on the stormwater budget? And the last is the real property revolving fund. This is the one that next to last. This is the one that we added this year. The $72,000 there is a single expenditure for the roof replacement at the operations center. All of the paving that we were talking about a little earlier, the paving has fallen under the street paving fund, and I'll show you exactly where those dollars are allocated there. But this is the $72,000 that would be necessary for the replacement of that roof at the operations center. This is the $72,000 that I'm recommending be funded out of the fund balance on the revenue side. It's a capital item, it's a non-recurring expense, and I think it would be an appropriate use of those funds to do that. But that's a single expenditure from the real property revolving fund. The Public Services Fund, Fund 33, that's the $916,866. We enacted an ordinance a few years ago that established that fund and how that fund would operate. We've been monitoring that now for a couple of years. Revenue stream has stayed pretty consistent for us, but as we implemented that in 2010, our revenue has moved a little bit. No real good explanation for why we decreased here, other than the fact that we suspected there could have been some miscoding of some of those dollars either from the county or from us.
This is budget also, so the first year.
And budget decrease. That's right. So, and it's 40% of the total budget. So we follow that budget up or down. But we can kind of see that it's been a rather consistent revenue stream for us. As indicated in the transmittal letter, I do think that we're going to need to spend some time reviewing that this next year. You can see how we spend those dollars, but it is 100% directly related to the Public Services Department. No additional expenses, no more, no less. We simply take 40% of those, we move them over to the enterprise fund. We collect the per parcel fee that we collect on all parcels. That's the $75 fee. It funds the enterprise fund, and so what is happening there, as you can see, the $54,766 is showing as the fund balance appropriation. If those dollars are not being received, then that is how we are subsidizing the 40% fund. Because I've had a couple of you ask me, then, what does that really mean? That's the subsidy. And so we are subsidizing the enterprise fund through all other operations of the city. And we'll, after the audit this year, we'll take a closer look at the total performance of that fund, and you'll give us some direction of what we should or shouldn't do, any changes that we may or may not make, or that we continue forward with providing the subsidy. But that $54,000 is the subsidy. Questions about that? Very good. The Facilities Use Fund, that's Fund 50. Those are the dollars that we receive from renting City Hall, Cannon Center. I think we've got a few small shelter rentals that are included in that, picnic shelter, a few things like that. But the income on Fund 50 comes from those facilities. And then, of course, the expense related to that is directly related to reserve and replacement and operational expenses associated with the event center, the Cannon Center, and those shelters as well. Any questions on any of those expenses associated with Fund 50 out of the proceeds of the event rentals, space rentals? Building repairs, you can see line item 280 from 5,000 to 35,000. We're getting some age on our buildings now. We're starting to need a little bit more repair, replacement, and that's allowing us to be able to do a little more of that work. And then also the pond and fountain maintenance is becoming a larger expense for us. We were budgeted at $6,000. We've already spent about $14,000 this year, so we're anticipating that we would have a similar expense going in. Again, mechanical equipment, the age of that equipment is starting to require a little more maintenance, a little more repair, replacement of pumps and those types of things. And that's where those dollars would come from.
Going back up to
yes, sir.
Line 10, salaries, is that salary number subsidized anywhere else, or is that just...
That is only the part-time folks that we hire to work events when there's a rental. They would not work festivals, they would not do anything. The only expense that's covered here that is not a rental is the staffing that we provide to the Greer Heritage Museum. The 10 hours per week that we open and close that facility, that is funded through that salary line item as well. And the only other part of that is the part-time folks that come in specific to a rental.
I guess it's our event planner or coordinator.
Those salaries are in the recreation department. Yes. Other questions? And the road paving fund. Good questions that I've received from you about that. Folks have been keenly aware that there's some changes in that. From a revenue perspective, we are showing $222,000 as a transfer. We have the $98,000 that comes to us from the Greenville County road maintenance fee that's charged and returned back to us, and then about $100,000 on the Spartanburg side, giving us a total of the $421,150. When you look at the expense side of that budget, that is where we are allocating the $50,000 to traffic calming. That is the $50,000 to the sidewalk. That is the allocation for the driveway apron at the OC. And then the match money that we would allocate back to Greenville, to the Greenville County Legislative Delegation Committee. We were able to double that amount this year. So what happens is that right at $200,000 of this 421 is available for us to do match. So we'll take our $200,000, we go to legislative delegation, they match us, we come back and conduct $400,000 worth of work for that $200,000. Last year we funded that at about $150,000, so we got $300,000 worth of work. By adding to 50, we get an additional 100. So that's what happens there. The 50, the 50, and the 22. Again, those are dollars that I'm proposing in the revenue side are being appropriated through the fund balance appropriation. Because what we've acknowledged in the program that it gives us the ability to start to ramp up those dollars as we continue to ramp down the revenue for state aid. We have a little larger capacity there, and then we will see what the expenses will be moving forward. So we think this is a good opportunity to kind of get in, test the water there, and then as our budget continues to grow and we continue to mature in our budget, we believe that those types of expenses can be absorbed under the general operation revenue streams versus as a transfer. Again, the big kind of the placeholder for us out there truly is the state aid dollars and reallocating those dollars. So those are our budgets. We certainly want to make sure that we answer any questions that you would have this evening. I invite any of our department folks that are here tonight, if there's something that I've omitted that they have a burning desire to make sure that you are aware of, we want to make sure that they have that opportunity. If there are questions that you have, we want to make sure that we are answering those. We have the team on site with us tonight to do that. In 2 weeks, on June the 11th, this budget will be on your agenda. It would be at that time that if there are amendments to the budget, it would be appropriate to make those amendments. If there are things that we need to know or additional questions, we certainly have the 2-week period to make sure that we're continuing to get answers to you on those questions. We will go to public hearing on June 25th. We'll advertise that as the public hearing, and we are scheduled to do second reading on June 25th as well. If we should anticipate at first reading that we don't expect that we can have our budget adopted on June 25th, then we would need to do a continuing resolution on June 25th to allow us to go to July 1st, operating under the existing budget versus a new budget if we did not anticipate we would have one adopted at that June 25th meeting. But I think that we will probably be in pretty good shape, that if there are any changes that you would need to make, we can get that done on the 11th.
I just want to say I appreciate having the time that we had to go through this. It helps a lot.
Good.
And I appreciate the effort that y'all made to get it to us in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad we were able to do that, and we wanted you to have as much time as you need with this budget. Again, the budget has been made available on our website. It is available in print here. The slides that we presented this evening will be made available on our website as well, so that folks can see some of the historical data on all of our funds. Everything that we present in these workshops, we are making that available as well on our website. So we want to make sure that the public knows where to get that information, how to get the information, and if they need help interpreting that information, that those resources are available to them and those resources are available to you. So in conclusion for us this evening, our staff that are present with us, anything that we need to add? Am I sure you won't need that? Very good. And Mayor and Council, we ask the same question of you while we have everyone with us. If there's anything that we can provide to you tonight, moving forward.
I just want to echo Riley's remarks. I appreciate the fact that we've got a balanced budget as well too. While I know there have been some good questions and discussion on it, I think we've got an excellent starting point, and appreciate the effort that not only staff has put into it, but you as well too. Thank you.
It's your ordinances only define a handful of things that I'm required to do, and one of those things that I am required to do is bring you a budget. And we take that very seriously, and we're not always able to bring a balanced budget. Sometimes we have to all roll up our shirt sleeves and make very, very difficult decisions about service delivery areas. But I can, with confidence, say to you that I believe we've crossed over the hill. Financially, we are moving in very, very good area. There's good recovery for our community relative to annexations, planned development, commercial development. Reno is as busy as he has ever been. Great announcements that are still yet to come that are relative to jobs and investment in our community. Tax base will continue to grow, and I believe that we can maintain the cost of operating local government at a rate that we've become accustomed to and that has become affordable for us as a community. We evaluate yearly where we stand in relation to all the cities that we benchmark against, and we don't shift much. We stay very consistent with our competition, and we feel very, very good about that. Greer is a great place to live, work, and play, raise a family. We provide quality services when we go out and we interview and we survey our community. Our community tells us over and over that they receive great value for the services that they receive. We're very proud of that, and your staff works extremely hard to do that in a cost-efficient way. It's a budget that I am extremely pleased to present to you this year. It's balanced, and that's always good. And it's aggressive. There are things that we are able to do in this budget that we've not been able to do in years past, and it's growth-oriented as well. And so we're very excited about that. So thank you for your comments. We continue to look forward to your feedback over the next couple of weeks. We'll make a few of those amendments that we talked about this evening, and we will bring that to you for first reading on this June 11th date.
Council, any comments?
Thank you very much.
Staff, to those of you who have joined us to offer explanation or to offer even support this evening, thank you for staying with us until this hour. We appreciate it very much. Anything from council? Anything from staff? That concludes our workshop. Thank you.